Sweet Delights, the bakery romance series, written by Cecelia Dowdy, text copyright 2017 by Cecelia Dowdy, production copyright 2025 by Cecelia Dowdy. Praise for Cecelia Dowdy's writing. Dowdy writes with the right touch to keep the readers engaged and vested. USA Today, Chapter 1. Patty-Lynn? The familiar voice made her pause. She quickly turned and slammed right into Sam Richardson. Her lips brushed against his shirt right before she took a few steps back. Goodness, she didn't realize he'd been standing right behind her. "Sam, what you doing here?" She'd just finished setting up the wedding cake. The guests weren't due at the reception for another hour. "My friend Mark just married my sister-in-law Lisa. He sent me to the reception early to make sure everything was set up." Lisa, Sam's wife's sister. So she assumed Sam's wife, Lorena, would come strolling in at any time. She imagined the woman was part of the bridal party. Well, when Lorena turned up, Patty-Lynn would be sure that she was long gone. No way did she want to see the woman who'd stolen Sam's heart away from her 7 years ago. He leaned toward her, his arms stretched, as if he were going to give her a hug. No way did she want to hug him. She quickly turned around, ran smack into the table, hard. The table quickly tilted on an incline as pain shot through her knee. The wedding cake slid down the small table, right toward the floor. She stretched her arms out and screamed. Quick as a cannon, Sam raced to the end of the table and caught the cake in his arms. Workers in black and white suits appeared from the back, scurried and assisted Sam with the cake, set it back upright onto another nearby table. The manager yelled at his workers in Spanish, pointing at the legs of the faulty table. Apparently, one of the legs had not been properly locked into place when they'd set it up. The manager bopped his head toward her. So sorry, ma'am." Not half as sorry as she was. After the workers had confirmed that the legs were properly locked into place, she shooed them away. Before she could examine her cake to be sure no damage had been done, she focused on Sam. He patiently stood beside her. His intoxicating cologne wreaked havoc with her frazzled nerves. She gulped. It'd probably be a good idea to thank him. After all, if it wasn't for his fast save, her cake would have been splattered onto the floor, and then she'd have to explain the terrible fiasco to the bride and groom. She forced herself to look into his eyes. Dang, he had the most hypnotic eyes she'd ever seen. She used to swoon just staring into his chocolate brown eyes. Looked like he still had some effect on her, and that was not good, not at all. She finally forced herself to speak. "Sam, awful kind of you to save my cake like that. I appreciate it." He'd also helped to save her business. If word had gotten out that she'd ruined a wedding cake, her business would have been affected. She was sure of that. "You're welcome." He gestured toward the table that had caused them so much grief. "Did you need some help?" She was about to say no, but stopped herself. She could use some help. The white tablecloth had spilled onto the floor, and she needed another. "Could you ask the manager for a new tablecloth? I don't want to use that one since it was lying on the floor." Sam scurried away. While he was gone, she took a few minutes to compose herself and examine her cake. Surprisingly, the 3-tier cake swirled with rosettes and curlicues looked perfect. She saw where Sam's finger had touched the bottom layer, messing up a small sliver of the fluted icing. She quickly opened her bag of supplies and repaired the damage. There, nobody would be able to tell that this cake had been saved from death. Sam had been quick, that was for sure. She remembered how he'd been a fast runner on his college track team. He could sprint with his long brown legs. She also recalled he ran every day, either early morning or late at night. Good thing he'd come to her rescue this afternoon. "Here's the tablecloth." He rushed from the back of the kitchen, and working together, they quickly smoothed the cloth over the table. She was about to get the cake, but he stopped her. "Hold on." He slammed his hand on top of the table, then forced himself to bump right into it. What in the world was he doing? I just want to make sure it won't topple over if somebody slams into it again. Ah, now that was smart. Well, she needed to be smart too. What if they tried to move this heavy cake and slipped or something? She took the cake boxes and dismantled the cake, carefully setting each tier back into the box. What are you doing? I don't trust myself to move this whole cake back to that table. It's heavy. I know you did a fast save earlier, but I just want to be sure. After she'd dismantled the cake, she carefully carried each layer back to the table, set one layer on top of the other. Now, all she needed to do was put the figurine of the bride and groom on the cake. She removed the cake topper from the packet and pressed it into the white icing. The sweet, delicious scent of vanilla wafted around her. You do some nice work, Patty-Lynn. Thanks, Sam. She needed to be cordial to him. She eyed the dark suit and blue shirt that hugged his trim frame. Oh, how she'd used to love it when he'd held her in his long, lanky, muscular arms. She nodded toward him, eyed the cake again. Well, she'd finished her duties here. Time to get back to work. Well, Sam, nice seeing you again. Thanks again for helping me. I'm much obliged to you for doing that. She gathered her bag of supplies, slipped it over her shoulder. Have a nice day. She strolled toward the exit. Patty-Lynn, wait. His deep, sexy voice resonated in the room, making her heart pound. Oh, how she remembered how excited she'd become when her name rolled from his beautiful lips. No, Sam, I've got to get to work. She had a special order to fill that day, 50 banana cream pies for a huge corporate event. She'd been selling a lot of her blue ribbon banana cream pies lately. Since she'd recently won the French International Pie Competition, her sales had doubled. I've opened a new office for Richardson Enterprises in Crystal Spring. Lord help her, she couldn't believe Sam had actually moved to her small town. She recalled he lived near his family, about 2 hours away, up in Northern Virginia. The thought of Sam being in such close proximity rattled her. Why don't we get together for a picnic? Oh no, he had to go and mention a picnic. When they dated, her favorite activity was having a picnic in the park. They'd shared thick sandwiches and huge cups of cold iced tea. He'd teased her, telling her how much he enjoyed hearing the southern twang in her voice. He'd loved her southern accent, said that she sounded cute when she spoke. He'd leaned in for warm, romantic kisses while they'd enjoyed their treats. Afterwards, they'd eat thick, sweet slices of pie. Those warm kisses, those picnic dates, that's what had gotten them into trouble. As soon as his sister Kelly had spotted them, ratted them out, things had gotten out of hand. Kelly knew that his parents wouldn't approve of their relationship. Well, she'd learned to let bygones be bygones, at least she thought she had. But if she'd really let bygones be bygones, then why did hearing Sam's voice make her feel weird, lightheaded, almost hypnotized? The memories swirled through her, making her wish her day had gotten off to a better start. Besides, he was married to Lorena, so why would he want to go on a picnic date? Well, she didn't want to have anything to do with a married man. Kind of sad that Sam had such loose morals. She needed to focus on leaving. Sam, it's been real nice seeing you again. She swallowed and forced herself to give him her megawatt smile. Not a good idea to let him know how seeing him again affected her. She offered her hand and he eyed her palm, accepting it. Her white skin clashed with his dark chocolate complexion. She gave him a firm handshake before offering another smile. She hoisted her bag onto her shoulder. Standing tall, she rushed toward the door and pushed it open. She welcomed the heated warmth from the sunshine as she scurried to her delivery van. Sam eyed his deceased wife's sister, Lisa, as she popped a bite of wedding cake into Mark's mouth. Seeing his wife's identical twin get married had been bittersweet. Hard to believe that Lorena had been dead for 2 years. He squeezed his napkin. So many thoughts ripping through him. Too many. He'd just gotten his MBA. His father had insisted he get an advanced degree before promoting him to the marketing and food distribution director's position. Surprisingly, when his father had said that Crystal Spring, Maryland was where their new office would be located, he'd wondered if God was showing him a sign. As soon as he'd heard this news, he'd thought about Patty-Lynn, the first woman he'd loved when he was only 21, a senior in college. When they dated, she'd told him that she'd been born in Crystal Spring, and that's where she'd lived during the first 7 years of her life. Now it was late March, and their new office was set to open. It had been a leap of faith for his dad, allowing Sam to run his own office. After pictures had been snapped of the happy couple eating cake, the confection was served to the guests. Several slices were also slipped into white paper bags, ready for guests to take home. A server approached and slid a white plate toward him. The cake looked awesome. The white cake, bright red filling, pale frosting. He cut his fork into the delicate cake and popped a large bite into his mouth. Strawberries, sweet sugar, delicious. He closed his eyes, vividly recalling that Patty-Lynn had lived in the basement apartment of an off-campus house. She'd made him a cake in her small oven for his birthday. His birthday cake had tasted just like this wedding cake. She didn't have much money. Only 18 and just out of high school, she'd moved to his university town from down south and worked in a fast food place on campus. He'd managed to keep their intense, deeply emotional relationship a secret from his parents. He opened his eyes, the memories haunting his mind. He inwardly cringed, recalling how he'd hurt Patty-Lynn, one of the sweetest women he'd ever met. Eyeing the crowd, he enjoyed another bite of cake. Man, seeing her again made it seem as if time had stood still. Patty-Lynn still looked the same, petite, pretty. Her smooth white skin was sprinkled with cute freckles over her nose. How he'd loved her rosebud-shaped mouth. Her lips turned down when she was upset or afraid. Patty-Lynn had had her share of disappointments over the years. When they dated, she'd struggled with so many problems. She didn't have the luxury of having a family to back her up. She was used to being by herself. "Hey, man." Mark clapped him on the shoulder. He'd been in such deep thought that he didn't realize the bride and groom were now circulating the room, making sure they greeted every single guest. "You looked like you were a million miles away." Mark had removed his tuxedo jacket and had loosened his tie. He'd noticed a few of the younger female guests eyeing Mark during the reception. His friend got his share of female attention with his dark skin and striking good looks. Mark had mentioned that Lisa would get upset when females openly admired him in public. He tried to smile. "I was. You look upset." This was no time or place to tell Mark about all that was on his mind. "Yeah, something happened before the reception." Mark gestured toward the stairs in the lobby. "Why don't we go up to the suite to talk about it?" Both the bride and groom had a private suite. "Are you sure? Who took time to talk about a problem during a wedding?" Mark checked his Rolex watch. "I have a few minutes. Lisa won't get upset as long as I don't stay too long." Might as well. He needed somebody to talk to right now. His mind was so full of tumultuous thoughts that he thought his brain would explode. He followed Mark into the posh lobby. Chandeliers dipped from the vaulted ceiling. Plush carpets sunk beneath their shoes as they made their way up the stairs. He followed Mark down a long hallway before he opened a white door marked as Groom's Suite. Sam followed him into the room. Mark dropped into a chair, propped his feet onto a stool. "Man, I'm tired. I can't wait until we leave for Hawaii in the morning. Now, what's up?" "You remember you'd mentioned you'd had some problems with the caterers? Lisa wanted me to come to the reception early to make sure everything was set up before the bridal party arrived." "Yeah, man, thanks a lot for doing that." Sam nodded, rubbed his hand over his head. This was so hard to talk about. He took a deep breath. What he needed was a good stiff drink, but alcohol was something he'd given up when he'd become a Christian. The temptation was just so great, hard for him to indulge without overdoing it. "Well, when I got here, the baker was setting up the cake. It was Patty-Lynn." He told him how he'd fast-saved the cake. Mark blinked, frowned. "Patty-Lynn? Who's that?" "Lisa never told you about Patty-Lynn." How strange. He knew that Lisa was aware that he'd broken up with Patty-Lynn right before he'd started dating her twin sister Lorena. He figured Lisa would have mentioned it to Mark. After all, Lorena was the person he'd married 1 year after he'd broken up with Patty-Lynn. Mark shrugged. I know the baker I hired to do the cake owns a bakery called Patty's Pie Palace over in Crystal Spring. Other than that, I don't know her. We were fortunate to get her to do our cake. Really? Why? Since our reception was an hour away from Crystal Spring, we weren't sure if we were too far away for her to deliver it. He shrugged. But she said she'd do it. I thought the cake was good. He focused on Sam. Should I know her? The first time I saw her was when I ordered the cake. Lisa wasn't with you when you chose the cake? Mark shook his head. Nope. She was so busy with other stuff. And you know Lisa, she's not a big fan of sweets. She left the cake totally up to me. So Patty's Pie Palace was recommended by our wedding coordinator. I visited her shop, chose a vanilla wedding cake. He shrugged. Seemed easy enough. Should I know her? He repeated. I guess not, since Lisa didn't mention her to you. It was just strange seeing her. I feel so bad. About what? Mark threw his hands in the air, as if upset that Sam was taking so long to explain what was on his mind. I dated Patty-Lynn 7 years ago. Mark nodded, stroked his chin. So? He patiently waited, as if coaxing Sam to open up to him. My parents and my grandparents didn't approve of her. She wasn't from a good family. Well, she barely knew her family. She was poor, her parents died in a car accident when she was a kid. She was raised by different foster families. She'd been on her own since she was 18. She had a deep Southern accent, terrible table manners. So she was from the wrong side of the tracks? Yeah, but she didn't put on airs. Mark frowned. What do you mean? I mean, she was real, so blunt, so open, so honest. I loved her and she loved me. We dated for a year and, well, my parents, well, you know how they are. Yeah, unfortunately I do. Richardson Enterprises had been a big family food distribution business for over 150 years. It had been started by manumitted slaves within his family and had grown. His parents and grandparents had protected that legacy with an iron fist. Can you imagine how they reacted when I started dating a poor, uneducated woman? They also objected to the color of her skin. That had been the biggest pill for them to swallow, especially for his grandparents. They'd been highly vocal about their wanting him to date a wealthy black woman. I'm surprised you found the courage to tell them. I didn't. He frowned. How'd they find out? Kelly saw us during a picnic date and told my parents. He dropped his head into his hands. The memories tumbled through his mind like unwanted bricks. The arguments, the discussions, the pain. When they discovered that Patty-Lynn was not just a brief fling, but that he'd been secretly dating her for a year, declared his love for her, they'd made him miserable. His grandmother had threatened to withhold his inheritance if he married Patty-Lynn. If he had any children, they would not be able to be a part of Richardson Enterprises. The turmoil, hurt, and pain that his family had caused, it was just too much. In spite of his deep love for Patty-Lynn, he didn't want to hurt her. I don't need to explain all of this to you. I think, knowing my family, you can imagine their reaction. So you broke up with her? Mark asked quietly. He nodded. By the time we broke up, she was 19 and I was 22. Patty-Lynn cried, hard. I cried too, but I just wanted her to be happy. I honestly didn't think my family would ever accept her. They'd been openly rude to the woman he'd loved. He'd brought her to the house for a family dinner, and it had been a disaster. A formal dinner setting, she'd not known which utensil to use. She'd spilled her wine. She'd been so nervous. Then he'd been upset with himself. Sure, he'd warned her about his family, but he could have schooled her about the utensil setting. He'd been so preoccupied, worried about his family's reaction, that he didn't think of things he could have done to make things easier for Patty-Lynn. Heck, who was he kidding? Even if he'd taken the time to teach her some of the things he'd known since he was a child, the proper way to act, the way to sit, how to eat, would they still have accepted her? He doubted it. She'd still not meet their high expectations. Although she'd worked in a fast food joint on his college campus, she'd had no aspirations for college. His parents had cringed at her Southern public school education. They'd openly wondered why he didn't simply date one of the college students. When his mom had asked her about her educational endeavors, Patty-Lynn had haughtily told his mom that she didn't have time for school. She did well enough on her own. Plus, how was she going to pay for school? She was barely making a living for herself. So seeing her today got you thinking about stuff? Yeah, my life has changed so much. He'd become saved, now relied on Christ for his decisions. He tried to do everything that his parents wanted, felt they knew best. But for some reason, he always felt as if his dad never approved of his actions. He still thought his dad was a bit harsh with his criticism, and he figured in time he'd earn his father's approval, especially since he'd be opening the office in Crystal Spring. Mark checked his watch. Well, I've got to get back downstairs. I know Lisa will be looking for me, but if you want my advice, I'll tell you what I think you should do. He sat up straight. This should be good. He'd been friends with Mark for over a year. They'd hit it off after he'd joined Mark and Lisa's church. Whenever he sought Mark's advice, he'd never steered him wrong. The man had a good head on his shoulders, so hearing what he had to say would be interesting. What should I do? Mark cleared his throat. Give it a few days. If she's still on your mind, simply visit her at her bakery. Mark recited the address. Oh, when you visit, you might want to try her banana cream pie. Best pie I've ever eaten in my life. Chapter 2. Sam sliced the pie and plopped it onto a plate. He sure looked wonderful. His lean brown legs sported a pair of shorts and brown sandals covered his big feet. I love you, Patty-Lynn. I love you too, Sam. His dark eyes twinkled, and he grinned. He was the most perfect man she'd ever met. Hopefully, he'd be in her life forever. She glanced down at the pie. Banana cream, yummy. Patty-Lynn grinned as soon as she spotted the pale yellow piece of pie. Sam sliced his fork into the pie and she closed her eyes, anticipating the first bite. She opened her eyes, stared at her cream-colored bedroom walls. Drat, just a dream. Seeing Sam 2 weeks ago at the wedding reception was messing with her mind. She had not thought or dreamed about that man in years. So why was seeing him again making her feel so rattled? He'd been constantly on her mind the last couple of weeks, which was not good at all. She sat up in bed. Bright sunlight spilled into the room. She blinked and eyed her clock. 1 p.m. She'd been too lazy to get up and go to church that morning. She'd had a lot on her mind the previous night, had been tossing and turning, not getting much sleep. She yawned, knew exactly what she needed to do. After she'd brewed her coffee, she poured the liquid into a thermos, got a couple of cinnamon rolls she'd baked the previous day. She placed the rolls into a bag. After she'd washed up and changed into her clothes, she left her second-story apartment and ventured outside. The bright, hot sunshine spilled from the sky as if God were drowning the earth with gladness. Kids rushed down the street on bikes, and a toddler clutched his mom's hand, strolling down the sidewalk with shaky steps. One thing she loved about Crystal Spring was the warmth that the residents showed to one another. She waved to a neighbor as she got into her car. She started the engine, already feeling a bit better. After driving for 15 minutes, she turned onto the secluded, ritzy community on the edge of town. The gorgeous homes looked amazing, and the green grass appeared nice and luscious, as if drinking in sunlight. There'd been talk about making this rich neighborhood into a gated community. She'd been ecstatic that they'd not done that. If the neighborhood was gated, then she'd not be able to come and visit her house when she wanted. She slowed her speed, drove through the neighborhood at a snail-like pace. She stopped across the street in front of the familiar house, the red brick 3-story home. She pulled her keys out of the ignition, leaned back against her seat, and stared at the house. She took a huge sip of coffee, opened her paper bag, and removed a cinnamon roll. Just seeing this house filled her with warmth, peace, and comfort. Her eyes watered. She quickly blinked the moisture away. Not wanting to be a nuisance, she'd been fortunate that nobody had ever complained about her spontaneous visits to stare at this house. She'd been careful not to draw too much attention to herself. She only came to stare at the house occasionally. This was her house. No, it wasn't her house in ownership, but in her heart, this was her home. She'd spent the first 7 years of her life in this house. She'd lived in the basement with her parents. Her mom had worked for the owners. At the time, both of the owners were doctors, and they'd worked long hours and had no children. Her mom cooked, cleaned, and did most household chores. Since her mom had been at the couple's beck and call, they'd agreed to allow them to live in the basement apartment for free, which proved a blessing since her dad had not been able to keep a job. His drinking problem often got in the way of his keeping himself employed. Although her young life had been riddled with pain, there'd been much happiness in the basement of this house. The breeze blew, and the red tulips danced in the wind. She reckoned those were the same tulips she'd planted with her mom when they'd lived here. Since she'd relocated to Crystal Spring, she'd seen these tulips bloom each year, and she'd recalled the cool autumn day when she'd planted the bulbs with her mom. She closed her eyes, recalling her mom's gentle voice as she'd set the bulbs into the ground. "These will be the prettiest flowers, Patty-Lynn," she'd said. She took another swig of coffee, bit into the cinnamon roll. The memories twirled through her mind like snowflakes. She'd been spending the night at a friend's house. Her parents had gone out to the movies. Apparently, her father and mother had gone to a bar afterwards. Her dad had gotten drunk. They'd been in a tragic car accident that thunderous, rainy night. She'd lost both of her parents in that accident. Her life had not been the same ever since. She'd been carted off to Mississippi to her mom's aunt, who'd been given temporary guardianship. She'd barely gotten settled into her new life when her mom's aunt had died, a massive heart attack. The woman had only been in her 40s, and Patty-Lynn had barely gotten to know her. After that, she'd been placed in 3 different foster homes until she turned 18. Determined to make it on her own, she'd relied on the kindness of the one good friend she'd had in high school. Her best friend arranged for her to work in her aunt and uncle's fast food joint on Maryland University's campus. The kind couple had also agreed to allow Patty-Lynn to live in their home as a boarder. Their kindness had astounded her. Devoted Christians, they'd openly shared their faith with her, but at the time, she didn't need God. After all, God obviously didn't care for her since he allowed her parents to be killed and then let her great-aunt die. She rejected their faith, but had gratefully accepted their kindness. Since she'd relocated from Mississippi, Marylanders often commented about her Southern accent. She'd been glad to be back in Maryland since she considered it to be her true home. Scared and eager, she'd worked at the campus restaurant, and when Sam Richardson had strolled into the restaurant, ordering a burger and fries, her world had tilted. She'd been smitten with his charming good looks, easy smile, and confidence. His family also had money, something she'd never had her entire life. She'd often fantasized about marrying Sam. Those fantasies had died the day he broke up with her. After their breakup, she continued to work at the fast food place, but being on the college campus just reminded her about being with Sam. At 19, she was ready to move again, in spite of the kindness of her employers. She wasn't able to relocate to Crystal Spring, the place she considered her hometown, until she'd turned 20. She'd been having these impromptu visits to her favorite house since she'd returned to Crystal Spring. Movement in the front yard of her house startled her thoughts. She blinked and spotted 2 workmen digging a hole in the front yard. Who were they, and why were they doing that to the yard? Minutes later, the 2 men planted a sign in the grass, "For sale." She gasped, dropped her thermos, and coffee leaked onto the floor. She lifted the thermos, dropped it into the cup holder, still staring at her home. She'd recently started searching for a home, saving her money toward the down payment. "Thank you, Jesus," She didn't care what it took, but she was determined to buy this house for herself. The excitement of her house being on the market zinged through her all night. She took 2 sleeping pills. Maybe the medicine would help her to fall asleep. She breathed deeply. "Patty-Lynn, where are you?" Her dad. During those rare times when the two of them were in the house alone, he'd break the rules and they'd do all sorts of fun things. He'd let her go wherever she wanted in the house when they played hide and seek. It had taken him a half hour to find her. He opened the utility closet in the basement. His tall, lanky body hovered over her. She playfully screamed while he scooped her out of the closet with his thin arms. He'd planted a kiss on her cheek. The stubble from his beard tickled her skin, and she'd laughed. Her eyes popped open. The utility closet had been built into the house, so she assumed it was still in the basement. She'd love to go and see it again and reminisce about those wonderful times she'd spent with her parents. Safety, protection, love. Those were the 3 words that popped into her mind whenever she thought about her childhood home. She grabbed the glass of water beside her bed and took several sips. Her memories of her parents were so vivid and real. She'd dream about her folks, especially when something heavy was on her mind. The sleeping pills had only given her a couple of hours of rest. Nervous excitement fluttered through her as she got out of bed, and for the 5th time that night, she again pulled out her phone and checked the website for the real estate company printed on the for sale sign for her house. The home was not listed, yet there'd been a sign in the yard. How weird was that? Seemed like there'd be a listing online if the house was really for sale. The realtor's office opened at 9. It was located downtown, not far from her bakery. She didn't want to call. Heck, she wanted that house so bad that the longing burned in her gut. She took a deep breath. She texted her assistant, Rachel, told her to open up the bakery on her own that morning. She also told her that she'd be into the bakery probably mid-morning. After she sent the text, she opened up her laptop. She accessed her bank account and checked out how much she'd saved towards the down payment for a house. She sighed, stared at the measly amount. She highly doubted that would be enough for a down payment for that large house, so she needed to find a way to make some more money. Since she'd won the French International Pie competition held in Paris, she'd sold a lot of her banana cream pies. If business continued to blossom, she was sure she'd have enough money to buy that house, eventually. She didn't want anybody to snag it up before she had enough funds to make her offer. However, problem was, since the house was not listed, it was hard to determine how much she actually needed. She'd needed to find out the asking price for the house, which she hoped to have later that day. Her phone buzzed. Rachel responded to her text. "I'll open the shop tomorrow." "Everything okay?" "Fine. Just an unexpected errand. Should be in before noon." She focused on her computer screen again, reviewed her budget, and she also reviewed her business plan that she'd laid out for the following year. She didn't want to get discouraged, but it was hard not to feel a bit deflated. She knew the house couldn't stay on the market forever, so she was working with limited time. After doing a financial review of her business, she checked the time, 8 a.m. She blinked, her eyes suddenly sore and heavy. After taking a quick shower and changing into her uniform, she got a strong cup of coffee, an apple, and a cinnamon roll. She'd eat breakfast while she drove to the realtor's office. 15 minutes later, she opened the door to the realtor's office, and a beep sounded in the room, announcing her arrival. A blonde receptionist occupied the front desk. She studied her face in a compact mirror, smoothing lipstick over her mouth. She quickly put the compact away and focused on Patty-Lynn. "Hi, may I help you?" "Yeah, there's a property I'm interested in." She recited the address. "Can't find a listing on it." "Oh, do you have an appointment?" Wasn't she just listening? "No, I don't. I just saw the men put up the sign yesterday." The receptionist grumbled, typed a bit. "We have an open appointment at noon." But she didn't want to wait until noon. She wanted to speak with someone now. "I don't need no appointment. I only want 5 minutes of a realtor's time." "Is there a problem?" A tall, clean-shaven, middle-aged man approached from the back. This lady wants to speak with somebody. Patty-Lynn focused on the man, figured he was a realtor. I'm interested in a property. You don't have a listing online. Saw your sign up in the front yard yesterday. He gestured toward the back. Come on back. He shook her hand as she entered the office, introduced himself. Patty-Lynn plopped into a chair. What's the price of the house? He typed for a minute before he focused on her, reciting the price. She frowned. Would she even be able to afford that? What's the minimum down payment? We can take 3% down. She sighed, bit her lower lip. No way would she be able to come up with that much money in such a short period of time. Do you really want this house? His dark brown eyes appeared kind and sympathetic. Heck, this man was a stranger, but she sensed that he wanted to help her. Might as well tell him the truth. I like the house. Lived there for the first 7 years of my life before I moved down south. Oh, really? He raised his eyebrows. She nodded. I think of it as my childhood home. Know what I mean? I want to live there again. He nodded, appeared thoughtful for a minute. Look, I'll tell you a secret. The owners insisted on this asking price. I told them that it was too high, but they didn't listen to me. The housing market is not very good now. I'm thinking in a month or so they'll be lowering the price. This was a surprise. Really? Yes, if you leave your name and number, I'll call you and let you know if the price goes down. He shrugged. I've had homes that had their prices lowered several times before they sold. She removed the business card for her bakery and scribbled her home phone number on the back. You know, we have a lot of nice homes that might be more within your price range. She shook her head, sliding the business card toward him. No, I want that house. My mind's made up. Well, if he happened to sell that house before she came up with the down payment, no, she wouldn't think about that happening. She pushed the thought from her mind. She removed one of his business cards from the card holder and stuck it into her purse. She might need to call him if she had any questions later. Bye. She needed to return to the bakery and get started on a special cupcake order. The sweltering sun beat on Sam as he strolled down the street. He needed to stop in the coffee shop to get a cup of coffee. He'd had an early morning conference call. Now he just needed some fresh air and a cup of brew. He blinked, studied Patty-Lynn as she rushed down the street. She frowned while chewing her lower lip. She looked so cute and sad. All he wanted to do was take her into his arms and kiss that frown away. He recalled that look. When they were in college, she'd been in pain, an aching tooth. Not having much money to spare, she'd not wanted to go to the dentist. Her job at the fast food joint didn't offer health insurance, so he'd taken her to the dentist and paid the bill himself. After her tooth had healed, the smile had returned to her face. She'd kissed him, long and hard, let him know how much she'd appreciated his kindness. Well, looked like she needed some help right now. She scurried down the street. He'd better get her attention before she was out of earshot. Patty-Lynn. His loud voice echoed down the street. Several pedestrians stared at him as if he were disturbing their peaceful morning. She stopped, slowly turned toward him. Her pretty brown eyes widened when she spotted him. He rushed toward her. Hopefully she wouldn't run away like a scared rabbit. He recalled the wedding reception. Granted, she'd had to get back to work, but their interaction had been awkward. The circumstances surrounding their massive breakup had been awful, and he'd hurt her badly. Maybe they could work through those issues. No way did he want to give her the opportunity to scurry away before they talked. Her jaw hardened and her brown eyes narrowed to slits. What do you want? He stopped, took a few steps back. Uh-oh, looked like she hated him. It seemed as if she wasn't going to be able to forgive him for all of his past mistakes. Are you okay? Her frown softened like butter spread over warm toast. Sorry for snapping at you, Sam. I'm just upset is all. Her smooth southern drawl lulled him, made him want to spend some time with her. He wanted to catch up on all that had happened to her over the last 7 years. Why are you upset? The memory of his helping her with her dental bill floated through his mind. "Are you having money problems?" She'd had a ton of those while she'd worked on the college campus. Her eyes narrowed again. "Not everything is about money. Just because you're rich, don't mean you can fix everything." He held his hands in the air. He felt he was being attacked for no reason. "Hey, I was just asking." He lowered his voice. "I'm just remembering all you'd gone through when I knew you while you worked at the college. That's all." Her pale skin reddened. She clutched the strap of her purse and refused to look directly into his eyes. "Well, you can't help me. Not now anyway." He eyed the coffee shop a few feet away. "Why don't you let me treat you to coffee? If you recall, I'm a good listener. Sometimes talking things through can help." He remembered that she didn't have many close friends while she'd worked on the college campus. She'd kept to herself, and it had taken a long time for him to convince her to go out with him. It almost felt as if history were repeating itself. She took a few steps away from him, glanced down the sidewalk before finally looking into his eyes. "I can't, Sam. I've got to get to work." And then, just like that, she rushed away and disappeared around a corner. Patty-Lynn had been leery of him. Her feelings were justified, but she couldn't act like he was contagious or something. Crystal Spring was a small town, and they were bound to run into one another frequently. He finally strolled into the coffee shop. Funky jazz music drifted through the room. Young people sat at tables while they sipped coffee and focused on their phones and laptops. The scents of vanilla, cinnamon, and spices filled the room. He ordered his coffee. He sipped his brew while strolling back to the office. Thank God he had not heard from his father that morning. No phone call for the first few hours of the day was like a welcome reprieve. His dad lived 2 hours away, but from the way he called, it felt like he was right there beside him, looking over his shoulder every day. The weatherman had said it was a record-breaking heat wave for early April. It felt more like summer than spring. He welcomed the cool air on his heated skin as he pushed the door open to the office building. "You're back already, Mr. Richardson?" The security guard tipped his hat, giving Sam a warm smile. Sam held up his cup. "I just had to go to get a coffee. I needed a break before my next conference call." He returned the man's smile, got onto the elevator, pressed the button for the top floor. When the Crystal Spring office of Richardson Enterprises had opened, they'd rented the top floor. The premium location proved therapeutic to Sam. He sighed, fisting his hand while riding up. When the elevator doors parted, he rushed down the hallway, ran his security card through the scanner, and pulled the door open. Lush green plants sprouted from the huge pots near the receptionist's desk. The receptionist had the phone pressed to her ear while typing. She gave him a warm smile as he strolled by. He stopped and stared at the tropical fish tank that decorated their lobby. Clear water bubbled while colorful fish swirled around. He admired the fish breezing through the water. He touched the tank. These fish didn't have a care in the world. They just swam around, happy, carefree. What would it be like not to worry about anything? When was the last time he'd not worried about a thing, been carefree, unoccupied? His picnic dates with Patty-Lynn slammed into his mind with the speed of a freight train. Lord have mercy. He'd recalled all those times, happy times, just being with her. When he'd been with Patty-Lynn, it was as if time had stood still and there was nobody else in the world except the two of them. It had been 2 weeks since Mark's wedding. Mark and Lisa had returned from Hawaii the previous night. They lived in Northern Virginia, near Sam's parents, a 2-hour drive from Crystal Spring. Mark had texted him, said he couldn't sleep because of the time zone difference. He wanted to know if Sam had managed to hook up with Patty-Lynn. He'd welcomed Mark back from his honeymoon, but had left the question about Patty-Lynn unanswered. Seeing her a few minutes ago was like drinking a glass of cold iced tea on a hot, sunny day. Her pretty face was like refreshment to his thirsty soul. He strolled into his office. Pictures of the vivid blue ocean filled the cream-colored walls. 2 plants, identical to the plants in the front of the receptionist's desk, rested in 2 corners of his office. He dropped into a chair and popped the top off of his coffee cup. He took a sip, closed his eyes, enjoyed the steaming brew. He really needed this caffeine. He'd been awake since 4 a.m. He really wished he could take a nap right now. His phone buzzed. He opened his eyes. Dad. His stomach clenched, soured with dread. He pushed his coffee aside, answered his phone. Hi, Dad. Son, are you at the office? Yes? Of course he was at the office. Where else would he be? Well, I just wanted to be sure that we continue to look for new products for our food line. We need to hurry things up and get this rolling. Why the rush? Currently, Richardson Enterprises was profitable. If they made any hasty business decisions without properly analyzing them, they could end up making a costly mistake. I received a call from an Almarte representative this morning. Okay, now his dad really had his attention. Almarte was the largest hypermarket chain in the nation. They'd been trying to get their food products into Almart stores for years. What did this representative say? He said that they want to improve their dessert line. They'll be doing some massive research and testing. He said they'd be willing to consider any new products we have to offer. He raised his eyebrows. If he could come up with a dessert that the Almart baking suppliers liked, he could win his father's praise. Maybe his dad would stop calling him so much and trust he was doing a good job. Dad, that's good news. It sure is. I don't want you to let me down. I'm counting on you, Sam. How did the conference call go this morning? As he gave his father a rundown about his early morning meeting, he thought about all that had been happening within their business. Profits had been pretty stable for Richardson Enterprises over the last few years. They'd seen some modest growth over the past year. His dad had moved their Northern Virginia office to Crystal Spring because the rent had been so low. Some of their faithful staff members had relocated to the Crystal Spring office. Others had left the company when offered a nice severance package. Now they were expanding their product line, and the call from Almart sounded promising. They already had done a market test on frozen cookie dough. The difference between their frozen cookies and the other brands was that their cookie dough tasted just as good as homemade. Their scientists had tested hard to come up with the right formula, ensuring their cookies tasted better than their competitors. The cookie dough had already been placed on the market a year ago, but Almart had declined to carry it in their stores. Sam had not yet come up with any new food product ideas. Their key executives were having a meeting later this week, hoping to come up with ideas for testing. When they went through their list of options, Sam realized his options would be few. He'd already made some suggestions, but his father had shot them down one by one. Son, I'm counting on you. I hear you, Dad. His stomach soured again, cramped. His dad's demands, his deep, gruff voice, proved too much. Thoughts of a sun-kissed beach spilled into his mind. He imagined sitting on the shore, on a blanket, with Patty-Lynn. Her white skin would gleam under the sweltering sun as he leaned in for a kiss. Sam. Yes, Dad? I've been calling your name for the last minute, and you didn't respond. His stomach soured again. He eyed his coffee. His stomach was too upset right now to drink it. His stomach had been upset a lot lately, ever since he'd been informed that he'd be in charge of the Crystal Spring office. He pulled the bottle of Tums from his drawer, popped 3 into his mouth, and chewed. He closed his eyes again. The antacid should soon provide some relief. So I want you to give this some deep thought. Come up with some dessert ideas. I expect a full report from you for our next meeting. His dad would attend the meeting via conference call. Since his dad lived 2 hours away, it wasn't possible for him to attend all of their meetings in person. His dad had said that it was time for Sam to step up and be in charge. He sighed. He didn't want to be in charge. All he wanted was some peace and quiet, and some independence. Silence. His father had ended the call without even saying goodbye. Misery consumed him, and he closed his eyes again. Would he ever find the courage to leave his family's business and strike out on his own? What would happen if he told his dad that he didn't want to work for him anymore? Chapter 3. Patty-Lynn made herself comfortable at the front window of her shop, popped her laptop open. Her pies had been selling really well over the last few years. Sweet Delights, that was the name she'd chosen for her line of pies. She'd often thought of her pies as being delightful, feel-good food. When folks felt down, a piece of her pie would make them smile. Well, that's what she hoped. She eyed her blue first-place ribbons displayed in glass frames. Her banana cream pie had won a total of 12 blue ribbons. She'd been awarded the most recent win during the French International Pie Competition. Her heartbeat quickened as she recalled how her life had changed recently. She'd been aching to compete in the French competition for years. One of her customers was a travel agent. She'd made arrangements for Patty-Lynn to get a deeply discounted plane ticket to Paris. Her customer also had a friend who lived in Paris. She'd also arranged for Patty-Lynn to stay at her friend's house for free. Patty-Lynn had only had to pay for the exorbitant entrance fee. In exchange for her customer's kindness, Patty-Lynn had agreed to provide free baked goods for the next 5 years. She didn't mind the barter at all, considering her win had added a lot of value to her business. The Crystal Spring Gazette, the local newspaper, had featured her with an enticing article. The article had been published a few months before Sam returned to town. They'd taken a picture of her holding up her blue ribbon, and the article had explained the prestige of winning the competition. After the article was posted, that's when her profits had increased. She'd sold so many banana cream pies that she could barely keep up with the orders. Although profits had been increasing, she'd not been able to save as much money as she'd wanted. Thinking about money made her recall Sam's wealthy family. 7 years should be more than enough time to get over him, but his family's comments, their disapproval, made her inadequacies push to the surface. After their breakup, she'd started to wonder if others saw her in such a bad light. Did other people think of her as being an uneducated country bumpkin? When her friend Miriam had hired her to work in her bakery, Southern Comfort, Patty-Lynn had decided to go to business school. It had taken her 5 years to get her bachelor's degree by taking online courses. She'd been surprised about the wealth of information she'd learned in college, information that could help her in the business world. After her friend Miriam had gotten married, she'd moved away with her husband Carl, and then she'd sold her business to Patty-Lynn. After she'd purchased the bakery, she'd changed the name to Patty's Pie Palace, so her money had been tied up with paying the mortgage for her bakery and paying tuition for college. Now that college was over, she's been focusing on saving for a house. Tired of living in her apartment, she figured coming home to a nice house every day would make her days a lot brighter. She also wanted to make her business more lucrative. Heck, she was thankful to the Lord for all that He'd provided. She'd grown up poor, and now she wanted some money, enough money to do all the things she'd never had a chance to enjoy in her life. Patty-Lynn, you've been staring at that computer screen for a while. What's up? You look kind of sad. Her assistant Rachel made her observation as she approached the table. Thinking about Sam made her sad and happy at the same time. But Sam was married now, so she needed to accept that. Patty-Lynn turned toward Rachel. Dark curls dangled from Rachel's tight bun as she narrowed her eyes, giving Patty-Lynn a shrewd look. Well, looked like she couldn't keep her bad mood a secret. She'd just finished her special order of 25 cherry pies for an event. She glanced at the clock, 11:30. She still had some time before she had to do the delivery. She needed somebody to talk to, and Rachel was a great listener. Rachel leaned over, stared at the computer screen. She whistled softly. Nice house. Patty-Lynn scrolled through the pics on the screen. Yep, look at those wood floors and those granite kitchen counters. Kitchen's even got an island in the middle. She'd always wanted a huge, airy kitchen. She imagined herself cooking meals for friends from church. They're being impressed by her culinary skills. She loved feeding people, but entertaining at her apartment was a drag since there was so little space. This is my house, Rachel. I'm going to buy this house if I can come up with the money for the down payment. It'd be a few years before she'd saved up enough for a down payment for a house that grand. If she could just increase her profits even more, she may be able to come up with the money sooner. But by then, the house might not be on the market. She pushed the thought from her mind, silently hoping and praying she'd find a way to purchase her childhood home. Rachel grinned. "Your house? What do you mean?" She quickly opened up a file on her computer. Rachel leaned over, peering at the scanned photograph. "Oh my goodness, is that you? How old were you?" She pointed to the only family portrait she'd ever owned. "6. We're standing in front of the house that I want to buy." She then explained her personal connection to the house as she stared at the picture, memories exploding in her mind like wild butterflies. During her visits to the house over the last 5 years, she'd discovered that a family now lived there. The doctors who'd lived there when she was a kid had obviously sold the house and moved away. "So, do you think living in that house will make you feel better?" "What do you mean?" "It just sounds like if you don't get that house, you'll be highly disappointed." Now why'd Rachel have to go and get all negative on her? She could dream, couldn't she? What if God wants me to have that house? Ever think of that? I just don't want you to get your hopes up and then get upset if you don't get that house. Nobody understood her fascination with this house. Absolutely nobody. "Weren't you just listening to me? That house is one of the few connections I have with my folks." She closed her eyes for a few seconds, and then she opened them, looked directly at Rachel. "You don't understand what it's like to grow up alone without any family and only a few good friends. I want that house, and I'm going to do all that's in my power to get it." Rachel patted her shoulder. "Hey, calm down. I was just saying—" "I don't want to hear it. Let's just change the subject, okay?" She closed her laptop, bringing an end to their topic of conversation. "Whoa, what's up with you? You've been in a bad mood for the last 2 weeks." She sighed, vividly recalling the terrible event 7 years ago. She'd had an awful dinner date with Sam back then when she'd met his family. Their house had been grand, so grand she'd been impressed, mesmerized. She winced, again recalling how seeing Sam again had made her moody. "Rachel, something's been bothering me. Can't get it off my mind. Let's eat lunch and talk about it." After getting their sodas and sandwiches from the refrigerator, they sat at a table in the front of the bakery. Rachel leaned toward her, her dark eyes serious. "Now tell me what's on your mind." Where to begin? If she told Rachel all that had been twirling through her mind since she ran into Sam, she doubted she'd have time. The whole story would take her the entire afternoon. She bowed her head, closed her eyes. "Lord, please show me the right words to explain this to Rachel. I really have a lot on my mind and need somebody to talk to. Amen." She took a bite of her ham and cheese and sipped her soda. She sighed, took another bite of her sandwich. Bright sunlight spilled through the clean windows, highlighting the display cases. Peach, pecan, and cherry pies lined the shelves. The words "Patty's Pie Palace" etched the large front window. Petunias, violets, and golden marigolds bloomed in the window boxes. The wind blew over the blossoms and they danced in the breeze. A woman strolled by, pushing a baby carriage. "You going to sit there staring outside, or are you going to tell me what's wrong?" Rachel sure got straight to the point. "A couple weeks ago, I ran into Sam, a guy I used to date. I also ran into him again this morning." "So?" "Well, our relationship was pretty intense. I used to think we'd get married, but I wasn't from his world, you know what I mean?" Rachel shook her head. "Not really. He was from a well-to-do family. I loved him. He ended up marrying somebody else." "Oh, so he's married?" The thought rattled her brain. "Yeah." She then explained how she'd run into Sam at the wedding reception, how she'd recognized the name of his sister-in-law. "So I know he's still married to Lorena." "Why does seeing him again bother you so much? It's been 7 years. You're not over him yet." "Of course I'm over him." She stated this fact a bit too loudly, as if she had to convince herself that she was over him. How could she explain this to Rachel? It's just that I can't believe that I keep thinking about him. Do you think about him every day? She shook her head, pushed her sandwich aside. No. She didn't want Rachel to get the wrong idea. It's just that what happened between us soured my opinion about men. The thought of dating makes me sick, so I avoid it. Well, maybe running into Sam is God's way of nudging you, making you recall all that's happened in your life. Maybe it's time for you to meet some new people and start dating again. You should come with me to singles ministry tonight at my church. I don't want to go to that. It's just going to be a bunch of tired hens fussing because they can't find a man. Now there you go with your negative attitude. Patty-Lynn, you need to get out more. What do you mean? I go to church every Sunday. But you're alone a lot. No way. Where you been, girl? Can't you see all the folks that I serve here every day at the bakery? You know what I mean. I'm talking about socially. Come with me to singles tonight and meet some folks. It might do you some good. Well, what harm could it do? She may as well go and try to have a good time. She unplugged her laptop. It was time for her to deliver those cherry pies. Yeah, I'll go, but I don't want you trying to set me up with any of your friends. You hear me? Rachel stood up and grinned. I promise that I won't do that. After all, dating was the last thing on her mind. Chapter 4. Patty-Lynn trudged up the steps to her apartment. Her muscles ached, and her sore feet made her want to wilt right there in the hallway. She unlocked her door and went into her place, closing and locking the door behind her. She shuffled past the kitchen, went straight to her bedroom. She kicked her shoes off and fell onto the bed. This afternoon had been such a blessing. After her talk with Rachel, she'd made her cherry pie delivery. Afterwards, they'd gotten an unexpected stream of customers. They'd sold so many pies and cookies that her head spun. They'd sold out of everything. Even once all of the sweets were sold, they'd still sold several cold drinks and cups of steaming hot coffee. She'd discovered that a lot of people were in town for some sort of charity event, and that's why she'd had so much business. But now she was sore and tired. She'd been grateful for the extra money they'd earned that day. At least she had more money to put towards the down payment for her house. She'd checked the website and saw that it was still listed for sale. She'd even called the realtor and asked how quickly they updated their website. If the house were sold, she'd want to know right away. He'd calmly told her that he'd let her know personally as soon as the house was sold. She inwardly cringed, hoping that through some miracle he'd never have to let her know that the house was no longer on the market. She closed her eyes. She didn't want to go with Rachel to singles meeting that night. Rachel had convinced her to come in spite of her fatigue. You need to socialize more. Meet some new people. Take a hot shower and drink some coffee. Get rejuvenated. I'll pick you up at 7, her friend had promised. She peeked at her watch. 5:30. She had an hour and a half to get herself ready for this meeting tonight. Hopefully, she wouldn't fall asleep during their fellowship. After a long, hot shower, a cup of coffee, a Caesar salad, and a short prayer, she felt better. Maybe getting out and talking to some folks would break her out of this depressing mood she'd been in for 2 weeks. She pulled on her favorite pink sundress and slid her bare feet into her white leather sandals. She pressed diamond earrings into her ears. Her friend Miriam had gifted her the diamonds as a college graduation present. She'd been touched by her friend's generosity. She still missed having Miriam around since she'd moved to Alabama. But since she'd hired Rachel, she was glad that she'd made another friend. A honking horn blared from the street. She ran to the window and spotted Rachel's car waiting at the curb. When she stepped into Rachel's car, her friend laughed. Patty-Lynn, you look so nice. You smell good too. What kind of perfume is that? Patty-Lynn smiled. Cherry blossom. She'd found the forgotten perfume bottle in the back of her drawer. She'd recalled how much Sam had enjoyed the sweet scent of the perfume. During her last move, she'd found the perfume bottle abandoned in the back of her closet. She'd almost tossed it, but decided to keep it. The sweet, alluring scent made her feel better. Her heart lifted a bit as Rachel turned the radio onto a Christian rock station. As they drove to the church, Rachel chatted. She mentioned something about her toddler niece taking her first steps. Patty-Lynn only listened with half an ear, not really paying close attention. They pulled into the parking lot and quickly strolled into the church. "Hi, Thomas," Rachel greeted the tall, nice-looking man as he set up a table in the foyer. His striking blue eyes and dark hair made him look like a movie star. Patty-Lynn imagined a lot of the single ladies swooned over Thomas. "Hey, Rachel." Patty-Lynn eyed his muscled arms as he unlocked the legs of the table, setting it up on the blood-red carpet. Rachel gave her a quick glance and a wink, gestured toward Thomas. "Talk to him," she silently mouthed. Her face heated when Thomas finished setting up the table. "I'll get the tablecloth from the closet." Rachel scurried away. Thomas smiled, showing perfect white teeth. "Welcome to Singles. I'm Thomas. You're friends with Rachel?" Well, of course they were friends. Didn't he see them come in together? Well, she didn't need to be rude. She figured he was only trying to make conversation. She smiled, nodded, determined to make the best of the evening. "I'm Patty-Lynn Palmer. Rachel works in my bakery." "Oh, man." He shook her hand. His warm fingers cradled her hand for a bit too long as his blue eyes twinkled like Christmas lights. "It's so nice to meet you." She nodded again. "Nice to meet you too." He finally released her hand, continued to grin. "You have the most awesome cinnamon rolls." "You had my cinnamon rolls?" She found this hard to believe. She'd remember someone this good-looking coming into her shop. "Yeah, the admin at my job stops at your bakery to get the buns for our weekly breakfast meeting. I can eat a half dozen of those in one sitting." "A whole half dozen at a time? Goodness. So glad you enjoy them. You should try my pies. I call them sweet delights. Folks are partial to my banana cream." He nodded. "Sounds delicious." He grinned and continued staring at her. "You know, you sound so cute when you talk. Are you from the South?" Well, at least he liked her Southern accent. "Yes, Mississippi." "How'd you end up in Maryland?" "Long story." "Well, maybe you can tell me about it sometime." He leaned against the wall as if making himself comfortable. He acted like he wanted to stand there and talk to her for half the evening. She'd noticed while they'd chatted, other folks had breezed in and store-bought cookies and coffee had been set up on the table. "Nice meeting you, Thomas. I'm going to get myself some coffee and cookies." Patty-Lynn met a few more people while she munched on cookies and glanced around the lobby, taking in her surroundings. She'd never been to Rachel's church before, and she liked the homey, friendly atmosphere. After refreshments were consumed, they moseyed into the sanctuary. Rachel grinned and continued to chat with her friends. Her friends seemed to be having a good time, and Patty-Lynn was content to just sit and enjoy the chatter. Thomas moved toward the podium. His eyes twinkled as he studied the crowd. "Good evening, everybody." "Good evening," most folks responded. He gestured toward Patty-Lynn. "We need to be sure we welcome Rachel's friend, Patty-Lynn." Patty-Lynn felt herself flush, and she forced a smile, not liking the attention. "Patty-Lynn, thanks for coming, and we hope you'll join us more often." He smiled directly at her. Dimples winked from his chiseled cheeks. Rachel tapped her shoulder as he bowed his head. "He likes you," she mouthed, pointing to the podium. Patty-Lynn shook her head, amused, as she bowed her head with the others. "Lord," his voice boomed from the podium. "We come before you this evening." Bang. Patty-Lynn winced as the loud sound of a door slamming shut bounced from the back of the room. Someone must have arrived late. "To worship you, to honor and praise your name. Thank you for the blessing of your grace and wisdom, and for your ultimate sacrifice for us. Please let your Holy Spirit guide and protect us this evening. Amen. Amen." Patty-Lynn opened her eyes. She then focused on the podium. Thomas again glanced at her, gave her a wide smile. Patty-Lynn's heart lurched as she chuckled. "Not only do we have Patty-Lynn here with us, but we have another guest as well. My friend Sam has just arrived." He gestured toward the back. "No, It couldn't be the same Sam that... She glanced back and spotted Sam sitting in the last pew. She'd never imagined she'd run into him twice in one day. Their eyes connected. Her heart skipped. Sam stood up and nodded toward Thomas. "Thanks, Thomas. I think I'll sit a bit closer and join you guys." She gulped as Sam made his way closer. He made himself comfortable in the pew right behind her. He leaned toward her. "Hi, Patty-Lynn," he whispered. His sweet breath tickled her ear. The exotic scent of sandalwood and citrus wafted toward her. Bittersweet memories of her relationship with Sam played in her mind. She took a deep breath and tried not to enjoy his alluring scent. Well, she couldn't be rude. She gave him a half wave before focusing on Thomas again. She sensed Rachel staring at her during Thomas's speech, but she ignored her friend. Actually, she ignored Thomas too. She simply could not focus on Thomas's words with Sam sitting so close to her, right behind her. A multitude of thoughts tumbled in her mind. Why was Sam here if he were married? After all, this was a singles ministry. She eyed Rachel. Was it possible that Rachel knew Sam? Was Sam a member of Rachel's church, or was he simply visiting? Somebody else took the podium, Sandy something or other, but Patty-Lynn couldn't listen to her either. Finally, handsome Thomas closed the meeting with a word of prayer. A phone buzzed from behind her. Sam must be getting a phone call. Quick footsteps sounded while Thomas continued to pray. Once he ended the prayer, Patty-Lynn said her amen before glancing behind her. Sam was gone. Why'd he leave during the prayer? Was his phone call so important that he couldn't wait until Thomas was finished? She stood up and Rachel grabbed her arm. "Ouch!" "Sorry." Rachel dropped her arm. "Who was that sitting behind us? Was that the same Sam you were telling me about earlier? You seemed so rattled when you saw him." Rattled didn't even begin to describe how she'd felt. She finally managed to nod. "Yes, that's him." "I wonder how Thomas knows him. I've never seen him here at my church." She shrugged. "Don't know. I try not to think about him too much since he's a married man." "Well, I doubt he's married anymore since he came to singles." She leaned toward her. "Girl, I can tell why you were attracted to him. He's so tall, muscular, and cute. He smiled when he saw you." "You sure you've never seen him before?" "Nope, never seen him in my life. If he worshipped here, I'd remember him." She grabbed her purse. She needed some time alone to pull herself together. "Where's the bathroom at?" Rachel gestured toward the sanctuary doors. "In the foyer, down the hall to the left." Patty-Lynn rushed down the aisle, into the foyer, made a left. Sam stood at the end of the hallway. How she remembered that tortured look. He gritted his teeth, shoved his phone into his pocket. He then grabbed his stomach, winced. Tortured breath escaped from his sexy mouth. Was he going to be sick? Maybe he was ill and needed to find the men's room. "Sam, you okay?" Her voice softened, and it was almost like they'd been carried back in time, back to the days when he'd received those bothersome phone calls from his father. "Patty-Lynn, His eyes teared, but he quickly blinked. His clenched hand rested on his stomach. She touched his shoulder, took a deep breath. "I just want to make sure you're okay, Sam." "Patty-Lynn, I haven't been okay for a long time." Chapter 5. His stomach clenched and he winced again. He really needed his Tums. He had some in his car. Tums were the only thing that could make the pain go away. Patty-Lynn's cute face, her concerned expression, made him feel as if he were taken back in time 7 years ago before he had extra job duties and stomach pains. "I have medicine in the car. Give me the keys, I'll get it for you." She offered her hand, and heaven help him, he couldn't resist. He took her hand, cradled it. Her pretty brown eyes widened before her mouth clenched and she jerked her hand away. "What are you doing?" His stomach swirled with pain. He took a deep breath. He didn't want her angry with him. "Lord, help me with this pain. Amen." He closed his eyes and opened them. His stomach pain faded. He unclenched his fist, stood a bit taller. Patty-Lynn continued standing there, her cute face puzzled, her brow furrowed. The urge to kiss her swirled through him. No way could he do that. The Lord had placed Patty-Lynn into his path thrice within a 2-week time frame. No way was this a coincidence. She used to be his best friend, his confidant, his lover. He'd not been saved when he dated Patty-Lynn, and their relationship had been intense, consuming him. Now that he'd leaned on Christ, he knew that there were things that he was not supposed to do with a woman to whom he was not married. He opened his mouth and tried to find the right words to say. A pretty, brown-skinned woman rounded the corner and stopped when she spotted them. "Patty-Lynn, you ready to go?" She scanned both of them with her dark eyes, almost as if her mind buzzed with questions. "Be there in a minute, Rachel." The woman nodded before exiting the hallway. Patty-Lynn folded her arms in front of her, her dark eyes pierced right into his. "So, you going to be okay? Rachel's my ride home." "You don't have a car?" The question popped out of his mouth before he could stop it. When they dated, she'd been carless, unable to afford a vehicle. His grandmother had crudely stated that Patty-Lynn didn't have a car, driver's license, and did nothing to better herself. She'd be a disgrace to their family, and her white skin didn't appeal to his grandmother at all. Patty-Lynn had overheard his grandmother's comments. They'd broken up 2 weeks after his grandmother's tirade. Her rosebud mouth dropped open, and she leaned toward him. Her hypnotic brown eyes shimmered. He supposed she was holding back tears. "It don't matter if I have a car or not." Her deep, southern twang, her occasional improper grammar. Those were just a few of the things his parents disapproved. She shook her head. The tense set of her shoulders, her mashed-down lips. She was angry. "I thought seeing you at church and all, maybe you'd changed. But you still the same. I'll bet all you care about is your family." She took a few steps back, eyed his stomach. "You probably still letting your family run your life, and you're miserable." She rushed away before he could stop her. "Let me feed you." Sam made himself comfortable on the picnic blanket, cradled Patty-Lynn in his lap. "That's dumb. You don't need to feed me." Patty-Lynn's southern twang deepened, and she lowered her voice. He knew that tone. His girlfriend was excited, too excited to let him know that she really did want him to feed her. He popped some pound cake into her mouth, and she giggled. "So sweet and good," she cooed. "Not half as sweet as you." He leaned in for a kiss. Sam opened his eyes. His heart pounded. The dream had been so vivid and real, as if he were going back 7 years ago, before he married Lorena, before he'd caused so much grief to his family. He tossed in his bed. He eyed the clock. 3 a.m. He couldn't sleep. After making Patty-Lynn angry, he'd left the church and went home. After spending a few hours researching more food options to add to Richardson Enterprises' food line, he'd tried to sleep, but having that dream woke him up. He ached to pick up the phone to call Patty-Lynn. He didn't even know her number. What would she say if he called her right now? She'd hang up on him, no doubt about that, and she'd have every right to do so. 7 years ago, he'd been rotten to her, not giving their love a chance to flourish. He'd allowed his family to rule his life. Well, he had to work, didn't he? The family business was his legacy. What choice did he have? His life would have been miserable if he disappointed his family. No way was he going to be able to sleep. He sat up in bed, turned his TV on, and muted it. The glow from the television filled the otherwise darkened room. Lord, my life is a mess, and I honestly don't know what to do about it. He removed his phone from the charger and turned it on. After a quick Google search, he found the website for Patty's Pie Palace. He softly whistled. Amazing. Fetching tables and chairs were placed outside the shop. He supposed folks ate outside on nice days. The website also showed the indoor seating area. The display cases highlighted pies, so many pies. There were also cakes, donuts, and cookies offered too. A video showed pretty Patty-Lynn making the custard for her pie. He recalled Mark mentioning that Patty-Lynn's banana cream pie was the best. Surprisingly, his mouth watered when he watched the pie on the video. Seeing Patty-Lynn happily working in her kitchen calmed him down a bit. Her life seemed to be a heck of a lot better than his. She had her own business, and from reading her bio, it appeared that she'd bought the business from a friend named Miriam. The bakery used to only feature Southern desserts, but Patty-Lynn had added a line of pies called Sweet Delights once she'd taken over as owner. He winced. She'd been so upset when he'd asked her about her not having a car. He'd almost made her cry. His question had seemed innocent enough at the time, but as he thought about it, he could see why Patty-Lynn would be offended. The disparity between their financial situations had been a huge reason as to why they'd broken up. Now, he just had to make things right for her, but he honestly didn't know how to do that. He put the phone away. If he was going to go to work in the morning, he needed to get some sleep. He needed to be sure he was mentally functioning when his dad called him with his daily demands. Mark eyed Sam's full plate of food. "You're not hungry?" Sam shook his head. He eyed the spicy chicken and rice. The warm breeze blew, fluttering the napkin on the table. Used to be, he'd gobble his food now. Since his father had opened a new office and had placed Sam in charge, he'd found his stomach too upset to eat like he used to. Mark had made the 2-hour drive to Crystal Spring to meet with a client for his consulting business. Afterwards, he'd met Sam for lunch at a cafe downtown. They'd snagged outdoor seats, enjoying the warm weather. This was the first time he'd seen his friend since the wedding 3 weeks ago. "Lisa told me to tell you hello." He nodded. Did she enjoy Hawaii? She sure did. She even joked about our moving to Hawaii to live. He guzzled his water. She said the next time you're up in Northern Virginia to visit your folks, you need to let us know. She wants to have a cookout this summer. Sounds good. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the display. Dad. He'd better answer. "Hi, Dad. Are you at work today?" Of course he was at work today, Saturday. He'd been working every weekend since the office had opened. He figured he'd have to continue working on weekends until he found some products to add to their food line. "Yes, I'm having lunch with Mark. Mind if I call you back?" His dad grunted and ended the call. "You need to stop letting your dad run your life and find yourself some happiness." He placed his phone face down onto the table. He took a deep breath. Mark's advice hauntingly reminded him of the aborted conversation he'd had with Patty-Lynn the previous week. "He's not running my life." "Yes, he is. He controls you like a puppet on a string. Maybe you should mind your own business." His voice hardened. "Calm down, man. I'm on your side. You've lost weight since the wedding, and your stomach is always hurting. You been to see the doctor?" "No." He figured his pain would soon go away. It was probably stress. "I'm fine, just a bit worried." Mark chuckled. "You're a lot worried. Mind if I finish off your chicken and rice?" Sam leaned back in his chair. "Be my guest." Mark could eat like a horse. Mark dumped the leftover food onto his plate, shoved some into his mouth. He loved spending time with Mark because when it was just the guys, they ignored formalities and table manners. Mark guzzled his soda, gestured toward their server. "Can you bring me a slice of chocolate cake with ice cream?" The server nodded before strolling back to the kitchen. "Sorry for snapping at you." He took a deep breath. "I have been worried. I just don't want to fail and let my father down." Mark shrugged. "You're doing your best. Not much more you can do but pray. Anything else been going on?" "Yeah, I ran into Patty-Lynn at a singles ministry meeting at my friend's church." "The woman who baked the wedding cake?" "Yeah." He told him about their brief conversation. "I think I made her mad." "Well, it doesn't take much to upset a woman. Did you apologize?" He shrugged. "I couldn't. She left before I could say anything." "Well, I already told you what to do. You have the address for her shop. Are you going to visit her?" "I don't know." What would happen if he just showed up to her shop unannounced? He supposed if he purchased a pie or cake or something, she wouldn't get mad. He'd been thinking about their running into each other 3 times in the last few weeks. What did it mean? Patty-Lynn had been haunting his dreams, and he didn't know if it was a good thing or not to be dreaming about his ex-girlfriend. Come to think of it, in addition to dreaming about her, he'd been thinking about her too. He'd returned to her website a few times just to watch the video of her making her banana cream pie. Her cute pixie face, her wide smile, he almost felt as if he were falling for her all over again. But in spite of his attraction to her, he didn't think he could find the courage to go out with her. She deserved someone who had their life together, someone who didn't have to cater to a demanding family. Are you still grieving over Lorena? Is that why you don't want to see Patty-Lynn? Mark quietly voiced the question while digging into his cake and ice cream. No, I don't think so. He'd grieved hard over Lorena over the last 2 years, burying his grief in his work. He'd not thought about another woman, been attracted to anyone, until he'd seen Patty-Lynn. I just don't think that it could work between us. So much had happened, too much. When Patty-Lynn saw him, what did she think? Did she remember how cruel his family was towards her? Or did she recall the wonderful, passionate picnic lunches that they'd shared? Another thought occurred to him. He was a Christian now. He'd put Jesus first in his life. So that might affect their relationship. All things were possible through Christ, weren't they? Again, he thought about his overbearing father, his judgmental mother. No way could he subject Patty-Lynn to them. Pain swirled through his stomach. He groaned. You okay, man? Mark's dark eyes turned serious. He shook his head. Lord, please make this pain go away. Chapter 6. Patty-Lynn? The realtor. As soon as she'd seen his number, she'd answered. Yes? She closed her eyes. Lord, please don't let my house get sold. I just wanted to let you know about the house you're interested in. The owners have had it listed for a few weeks and nobody has shown any interest. They're lowering their price. He then quoted how much she'd need for the down payment. Still too much. But she'd do what she could to come up with the funds. I think they'll have to lower it a few more times before they have a buyer. I still think their asking price is too high. Thanks. Glad you called and told me. No problem. Are you sure I can't interest you in another home? I'm sure we could find some nice houses within your price range. No, I want that one. Keep me posted. Bye. She hung up. She abandoned the phone and pulled the banana cream pies from the fridge. She was riding over with Rachel again to singles group, and she'd volunteered to bring the refreshments. Hopefully, Sam wouldn't be there. Rachel had done some investigating over the past week. Apparently, Thomas worked in Sam's office building. The two of them had met in the cafeteria, and he'd invited Sam to singles. Through Thomas, Rachel had also verified that Sam was close to Mark and Lisa, his brother and sister-in-law. Rachel fed her this information that she'd pumped out of Thomas during church last Sunday. Not wanting Rachel to get the wrong idea, Patty-Lynn had only seemed mildly interested. The question as to what had happened to Lorena, Sam's wife, burned in her mind like a hot biscuit. If Sam had divorced Lorena, would he still be close to Mark and Lisa? A horn honked from outside. She spotted Rachel's car at the curb. She put the pies into a box and carried them into the hallway. After locking her door, she made her way to the car with the box of pies. I hope your singles group has plenty of napkins and paper plates. You know how messy my pie can be. Rachel grinned as Patty-Lynn sat in the front seat. I brought extra napkins. She eyed Patty-Lynn's outfit. You didn't dress up. She faked a pout. Patty-Lynn playfully swatted Rachel's shoulder. Oh, you, be quiet. This week, she dressed in a simple pair of jeans and a t-shirt. No cherry blossom cologne, no earrings or makeup. She simply did not feel like dressing up again. Rachel had hinted over the last week that she'd heard through the church grapevine that Thomas wondered if she'd be returning to singles again this week. Patty-Lynn had found Thomas's interest slightly amusing, but not all that exciting. Her thoughts had been haunted by Sam Richardson. She highly doubted that he'd show up at the singles meeting tonight since she'd gotten angry with him the previous week. He'd probably avoid her like the plague, which was fine with her. After all, they'd decided long ago that a relationship would not work between them. Wait a minute. No, he'd decided that things would not work between them, so he'd broken up with her. 1 year later, he'd married someone else, a woman to whom his family approved. A beautiful black woman from an upper-class family. Lorena. Having a hard time getting over him, she'd Googled him often that first year after their breakup. That's when she'd found the announcement for his engagement. Later, an article had been written about his wedding. 500 guests at one of the poshest country clubs in Northern Virginia had attended the nuptials. She'd read about the wedding several times, secretly loathing the woman to whom Sam had married. Shaken up about her life in general, she'd started attending church with her friend Miriam. She'd accepted Christ. She now leaned on him during her difficult times. Her friends were her family. She'd not been blessed with a family to guide her into adulthood. She'd always admired folks who had strong, supportive families, but when she'd witnessed Sam's family, their strong, overbearing nature, she wondered if he'd have been happier alone without his family hovering around him like a swarm of bees. Heck, who was she kidding? Although Sam's family was overbearing, she'd assumed he was loved. That's another reason it was so hard for her to open up her heart and date someone. She'd been afraid of getting hurt, getting taken advantage of. Sam had been her first serious boyfriend. She'd loved that man from the bottom of her heart, and he'd thrown that love away as if it were garbage. It hurt so much to be denied love because of family obligation, especially since she had no family of her own. "Here we are," Rachel chanted. She pulled into a parking space, and Patty-Lynn forced the dark thoughts out of her mind and got out of the car. She made herself smile as they made their way into the foyer. She carried the box of pies, glad they'd made it there before the other guests. "Hey, ladies!" Thomas sauntered into the room, his eyes resting on Patty-Lynn. Rachel grinned. "Hi, Thomas. I'll go get the tablecloths and napkins." Rachel went upstairs, so Patty-Lynn assumed there was a supply room up the stairs. Patty-Lynn set her box of pies onto the table, turned and bumped right into Thomas. "Whoa! Slow down, Patty-Lynn." "Sorry. You look a little tired." Did she? Well, she'd not had much sleep lately, dreaming about Sam. "It's been a rough week." She sniffed, took a few steps away from Thomas. His cologne overpowered her senses. What did he do, bathe in the stuff? "Oh, really? I'd love to hear about it. Maybe we could go out for coffee after the meeting." He took her hand. "I'm a great listener." The door opened and Sam came in, spotted Thomas holding her hand. She jerked her hand away. "Sorry, I can't." Sam narrowed his eyes, but he didn't comment about Thomas's pass at her. Sam cleared his throat. "Thomas, thanks for inviting me again." "Welcome, Sam. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself last week." Rachel breezed into the room with the tablecloths, plates, and utensils. What had taken her so long? "I had a hard time finding everything up in that closet. Looked like someone had moved our stuff from its usual place." Soon, others arrived. The pies were cut and served with hot coffee. "This pie is amazing." One of the women grinned while she took another bite. Some of the folks had never visited her bakery, so they were amazed at the taste of her banana cream pie. She eyed Sam. He ate 3 pieces. He didn't appear to be having any trouble with his stomach. Maybe he'd been suffering from a stomach virus or something the previous week. Thomas opened the doors to the sanctuary. "All right, folks, time to start." Patty-Lynn figured they'd clean up the mess before they left later. Sam came toward her, touched her arm. "That was the best pie I've ever eaten in my life." She gulped, secretly pleased with his praise. Sam didn't give compliments often. When he said he liked something, he really meant it. Her heart curled with delight. "Thanks, Sam." She gestured toward the sanctuary. "The meeting's about to begin." "Look, Patty-Lynn, I'm sorry about what I said last week, you getting upset. I didn't mean to hurt you." He'd said that before, 7 years ago, when they'd broken up. He'd said that he didn't mean to hurt her, but he had. The pain had cut like a razor-sharp knife. Sure, she supposed the pain had healed, but she still felt scarred and unloved. She stood up straight, looked him right in the eyes. She was loved by Jesus himself, and there was no greater love than that. She needed to stop these negative thoughts twirling in her mind. She needed to focus on Jesus's love and not think about shattered romances. "No need to worry about me, I'm okay." She gestured toward the sanctuary. "Thomas is about to start." Heck, maybe she'd have coffee with Thomas after all. Granted, he'd worn a bit too much aftershave tonight, but he was a mighty handsome man. After all, he had a nice smile and pretty blue eyes. "Can we get together? I really need to talk to you." She shook her head. "No, I don't think. It's strictly business." He touched her elbow. "I might have a proposition for you, a way for you to make lots of money on your banana cream pies." Her eyes rounded. She'd been praying for a way to make more money from her business, enough to buy her dream home. Well, maybe this was an answer to her prayers. "If you're serious about this, then meet me at my bakery tomorrow. 5 o'clock. She recited the address. Rachel would have left by then, and they'd be alone. At times, Rachel tended to be nosy, asking lots of questions, and she couldn't handle that while talking to Sam about business. Chapter 7. "You've been rolling that pie dough all day as if you're mad at it." Rachel eyed Patty-Lynn. Patty-Lynn ignored her friend, placed as much pressure as she could against the rolling pin as she smoothed it across the buttery, flaky crust. She then shoved the rolling pin aside, took a paring knife and smoothed the edges of the crust. She dropped the disc into the pie tin, filled it with peach filling. She loved the scent of raw, sweet peaches mixed with cinnamon and spices. She placed the second disc of dough on top of the filling. There, all 10 pies made. She just needed to bake them and have them ready for pickup. She dumped them into the oven, set the timer for 45 minutes. She'd finish off the pies with an egg wash. Using a pastry brush, she'd dip it into the egg and brush it over the pies, top them with white sugar. Then they'd bake another 15 minutes. She glanced at the display. She'd overbaked that day, working in the kitchen, rolling dough, cutting fresh fruit for fillings. She figured if she were hot and tired, she'd not be so nervous around Sam that evening. "Well?" Rachel threw her hands up in the air. "What's wrong with you?" No way was she telling Rachel that Sam was due at 5 o'clock. Her friend would try and finagle a way to stay around, just to see what was going on. "Nothing's wrong with me, just got a lot of energy, that's all." "Uh-huh." Rachel nodded, her dark eyes serious. "Something is wrong, you just don't want to tell me." Again, she shook her head. Well, hopefully Jesus would forgive her for the little white lie. Rachel shrugged as they made their way to the front of the shop. The delicious scent of peach pies baking filled the air with delicious sweetness. She got a cup of coffee, and Rachel joined her at a table. She took a sip of the hazelnut coffee, closed her eyes. "Why didn't you go out with Thomas last night?" Patty-Lynn opened her eyes. "Why you asking me about that?" "Because Thomas likes you." "Patty-Lynn, it's just coffee. He won't bite. He's a nice guy and you should give him a chance. Plus, he's cute." "When'd he tell you about asking me out for coffee?" "He called me today and told me." Patty-Lynn wrinkled her nose. "He wears too much cologne." "So? Just gently tell him not to wear so much cologne. Is that the only reason you won't go out with him?" She didn't even feel like answering that question, so she remained silent. "Look, Patty-Lynn, you can't resist men forever." "Who says I can't?" Rachel rolled her eyes. "You can't stop dating just because of what happened between you and Sam." She shook her head. That wasn't the full reason as to why she refused to date. Heck, dating Sam had hurt her, but her pain ran deeper than just her botched relationship with Sam. "This ain't got nothing to do with Sam." She mashed her lips together. She did not feel like talking about this now, especially considering she'd be seeing Sam again before the day was over. Rachel leaned toward her. Is it because you've been alone for so long? Did losing your parents when you were a kid and living in foster homes make you afraid to date, afraid to fall in love again? Rachel's voice softened. Good grief. It was so hard to talk about this. Well, she might as well be truthful. Easy for you to say take a chance. You never lived in a foster home. You have no idea what it's like, so don't judge me about what I do. Her voice came out harsher than she'd wanted. She took a deep breath, took a swig of coffee. I wasn't judging. Well, how about you? Why don't you go out with Thomas if he's so great? Because Thomas doesn't like me, he likes you. Do you like him? She honestly doubted that Rachel liked him, but she wanted to change the subject, not wanting to focus on her lack of love life. Rachel grinned. No. She drew out the word, as if wanting to be sure she made her point. But if someone were to ask me out, and since I'm unattached, I'd at least be open to going out with him. Some customers breezed into the bakery. Just think about what I said. Rachel went behind the counter to wait on their customers. Patty-Lynn took another swig of coffee and digested Rachel's advice. Oh no, almost 4:30. He needed to leave. He didn't want to be late for his appointment with Patty-Lynn. The executives closed their laptops. Good thing they were able to wrap up the meeting on time. They had some more food ideas to test for market. He had not mentioned Patty's banana cream pie. He couldn't mention that until he spoke to Patty-Lynn. He took his laptop and rushed to his office. His office phone rang. He checked the display. Oh no, Dad again. The man had called him 3 times already that day. This was getting to be too much. His stomach cramped. He sighed, answered the call. Hi, Dad. How'd the meeting go? His dad was supposed to participate via conference call. Sam had surprisingly convinced him to let him run the meeting on his own. It went pretty good. He outlined the ideas that the staff members had come up with. So in a few months, we should eventually have some new products on the shelves. You have any ideas yet? Dad, I'm working on them. The company needs you, son. Let me know as soon as you find something. Sam managed to end the call. He blew air through his lips, dropped into a chair and placed some Tums into his mouth. He closed his eyes. Lord, help me. Once his stomach settled, he finally stood up. He might as well get going. He rushed from his office, took the elevator down to the ground floor. Bye, Mr. Richardson. The security guard waved to Sam as he exited the building. He returned the wave, got into his car, and started the ignition. He pulled out of the garage. He accelerated onto the main road. Boom! His car swayed. He gripped the steering wheel. Boom! He pulled over to the curb. Smoke curled from his busted tire. Man, he didn't need this. Not now. He checked the time on the dashboard. 5 o'clock. He needed to let Patty-Lynn know that he'd be late. He pulled out his phone. No battery. He'd forgotten to charge it last night. He sighed. If he hurried, he might be able to make it to the bakery before Patty-Lynn gave up on waiting for him. He got out of his vehicle, popped the trunk of his car. Good thing he could change a tire pretty fast. It was almost 6 o'clock. Where was Sam? She blew air through her lips. Angst and turmoil broiled within her like a wounded knot. She pressed her hands together, mashed her lips down. The familiar feelings of being unwanted and unloved swirled within her. Heck, she'd been looking forward to Sam's visit all day. Well, sort of. She'd been scared and excited at the same time. That's why she'd been baking so many pies. She'd made an extra banana cream pie early that morning, placed it into the fridge, all the way in the back. She figured since Sam wanted to talk to her about the pie, she may as well have a fresh one for them to eat while they had their business meeting. She'd also made sure she'd made a pot of expensive imported French coffee to go with their pie. After Rachel had left, she'd gone into their small bathroom in the back, freshened up. She'd twisted her hair onto the back of her head into a bun. She'd even added some lipstick and rouge to her face. She'd examined her face in the mirror, studied the freckles sprinkled over the bridge of her nose. She'd always hated her freckles. Sam was the very first person to say that he liked them. Again, she'd recalled their romantic picnics in the park. They'd cuddle, and he'd playfully count her freckles, one by one, with his long brown finger. She often wondered if she'd been black, if they'd had a better chance of withstanding his over-judgmental family. She shook her head. No, the color of her skin was just one reason why his family objected to their relationship. She couldn't help the fact that she was poor and had no family. She pulled out her phone. She had to make sure she had not missed Sam's call. Then she remembered she'd not given him her cell phone number. But he could have called the bakery, right? The phone number was listed in the directory and on their website. A simple Google search would have given him the information he needed to call her and let her know that he'd be running late. She blew air through her lips. 6:15 now. Well, might as well go home. He wasn't coming. She'd been stood up. Had he been serious about this business meeting? Well, the Sam she knew didn't play games, not intentionally anyway. Maybe he had a family emergency and had forgotten to call. Well, she wasn't going to sit here, waiting. She'd go home, take a long, hot bath. Maybe she'd make a small homemade cheese pizza for dinner. That sounded good. Pizza and a nice green salad. She forced herself out of her seat, gathered her purse and her car keys. She stepped out onto the sidewalk, locked the door. Patty-Lynn. Her breath caught. Sam rushed down the street. Hi. He seemed out of breath. I couldn't find a parking spot, so I parked over on the next block. I'm so glad you're still here. Sweat beaded his forehead. His dark brown eyes sparkled with warmth. He looked so handsome, standing in front of her. The sun splashed onto his chocolate brown skin, highlighting his high cheekbones and full lips. Heat zinged through her body. She was so surprised to see him, she couldn't find her voice. Then, heaven help her, she couldn't find the energy to pull away when he leaned over and kissed her on the cheek, right in the middle of the sidewalk. Chapter 8. Sam pressed his lips to Patty-Lynn's soft white cheek. He finally made himself pull away. Hopefully she wouldn't get too angry. She blinked and her pretty mouth dropped open. Surprise flickered in her brown eyes. Why in the world did you do that? Her voice wasn't full of anger, but more like a quiet acceptance tinged with curiosity. He might as well tell her the truth. Because I wanted to. A teen whizzed by on a bicycle, the hot sun shined, raining them with warmth. She tilted her head toward him as if she wanted him to say something else. Well, might be best if they talked first. He eyed the etched lettering on her window, noticed the empty tables, chairs. She'd closed the place. She was probably getting ready to go home. No way was he going to let her leave now, not since he'd gathered his courage to approach her like this, setting up this meeting. He gestured toward the door. Mind if we go inside? Okay. She clutched a set of keys in her hand. She unlocked the door, her hand shaking. It looked like she was nervous. Well, he was nervous too, so they needed to figure everything out together. As soon as he came into her bakery, he felt like he'd come home. Home to where nothing worried him. The slight scent of cherries filled the air. Cherries and soap. He figured she'd wiped down the tables and mopped the floor before she'd closed up. Photos of delicious-looking baked goods tastefully decorated the yellow walls. One of the photos displayed a little boy and girl shoving a donut into their mouths. Laughter sparkled from the children's eyes. A cash register and rows of display cases nested in front of the place, and a sliding glass refrigerator offered cold drinks. 2 coffee urns rested on a stand beside the refrigerator. Then he spotted the framed blue ribbons. His heart sped up when he saw all of the competitions she'd won for her banana cream pie. He zoned in on the largest blue ribbon set apart from the others. He took a few steps closer to get a better look. His mouth dropped open. She'd actually won the French International Pie Competition. He'd heard about this prestigious competition. I see you won the French International Pie Competition. Yeah, sure did. I'm happy to say that I'm mighty proud of myself. Her voice came from somewhere in the back, way behind the counter. He studied the certificate and the blue ribbon. The The competition had been held in Paris. So I guess you actually went to Paris? Of course, I did. He wanted to ask her if it was her first trip out of the country, but decided against it. Winning that competition was a huge deal, and he figured that her blue ribbons, especially the one from the French competition, would make her pie a strong candidate to be mass-produced and placed into Almarde stores. Soft footsteps resonated from behind the counter. It looked like she was back there, making some sort of preparation. Soon he smelled something delicious. It smelled like coffee and something else. She returned from the back, holding a pie. She set the pie on one of the tables, along with a knife and a pie server. She turned as if she were going back to the kitchen, but he stopped her. He took her hand, looked into her gorgeous brown eyes. "Congratulations! I'm proud of you winning those competitions." Her white skin reddened. "Thank you, Sam. Mighty nice of you to tell me that." He released her hand, not wanting to further embarrass her with his praise. She made a quick trip to the back and returned with a full tray. The tray held 2 plates, forks, and 2 huge mugs of coffee. She set the coffee onto the table. She tilted her head toward the chair. "Have a seat. Might as well eat while we talk." "Lord, I don't want to mess this up. Help me." He stole a glance at Patty-Lynn. She lifted the coffee cup toward her cute rosebud mouth. Her hand shook, just a little bit. This meeting was hard for her. Well, it was hard for him too. A miracle. That's what they needed. A miracle so great and strong that it would make everything okay. Prayer. He'd pray for them right now. Without asking permission, he took her hand, bowed his head. "Lord, I think you know how hard this meeting is for both of us. Please help me and Patty-Lynn during this meeting. Let your Holy Spirit guide us and protect us. Amen." He squeezed her hand. There was so much more he'd wanted to say while he prayed, but he feared if he told the Lord everything that concerned him, Patty-Lynn would get impatient. It would prove to be a mighty lengthy prayer, and he didn't want to do anything to distance her. She gave him a quick nod, took the knife, and sliced into the creamy pie. "Thanks for praying for us. That was mighty nice of you." Her pale skin flushed when she spoke. He nodded back, resisted the urge to wink at her. She used to love it when he winked at her. She'd claimed it was sexy. Well, it wasn't the right time to do that now. He observed her while she lifted the creamy pie onto the plate. He sipped his coffee. It was delicious. She'd added plenty of cream and sugar, so she'd remembered how he took his coffee. He took another healthy sip. He still needed some time to gather his thoughts before he started their meeting. He sliced his fork into the pie, shoved a bite into his mouth. He closed his eyes, relished the sweet vanilla custard, whipped cream, and bananas. The banana flavor zinged on his tongue, and the wafer cookie crust tasted amazing. So good. She opened her mouth and laughed. Her eyes sparkled. "You're so funny. You always close your eyes like that when you're enjoying food." He swallowed the pie, grinned at her. Once he'd devoured 2 slices of pie, he leaned back into his seat. Strange that eating her pie didn't unsettle his stomach. He would have enjoyed just sitting here with Patty-Lynn, having a few minutes of fun, but he needed to get to the business at hand. He opened his mouth to speak, but Patty-Lynn touched his hand. "Wait, don't say nothing. I have some questions I want to ask you first." He nodded. If she wanted to know something, then she was free to ask. As a matter of fact, he had a question that he wanted to ask her himself. "Go on," he urged. "What happened to Lorena? Since I saw you at singles group and you kissed me on the cheek, I figure you not married to her no more." He gripped his napkin, swallowed, took a deep breath. "She died 2 years ago. Breast cancer." Her breath hitched. "Oh, Sam. I'm so sorry. You still grieving for her?" His grief had not seemed so bad since he'd reconnected with Patty-Lynn, but he didn't think it was the right time to mention that. "A little. It was worse the first year. It was sort of hard for me to go to her twin sister, Lisa's, wedding. It brought back memories of when I married Lorena." Patty-Lynn dipped her head, stared at the table. He figured she recalled Lorena was the woman he'd dated shortly after their breakup. Patty-Lynn had contacted him once after their breakup, accusing him of cheating on her with Lorena. After all, it had only been a week since their massive split, and he was already dating another woman. He could understand why she'd said that, but he'd told her the truth. His parents had set him up with Lorena. He'd dated her even though he'd still been in love with Patty-Lynn. He'd married Lorena, grew to love her as a husband loves a wife. "What about your stomach?" She threw the question at him, breaking the tense moment. He shook his head. "What's that? When I saw you at singles, you were holding your stomach like it hurt. Were you sick or something?" How did he explain the stomach pains? Better yet, why was she asking about it? "It was no big deal. My job is stressful." "But you told me you had some medicine for it." She wasn't going to let this go. "I was talking about Tums, an antacid." "I know what Tums are. You need to quit your job. Find something enjoyable to do with your life." He gave her a sideways look. Easy for her to say. His father was paying him a big salary, and the business was a part of the family legacy. Richardson Enterprises was going to continue to grow, and it was just expected that he'd be in on the ride. If he were to leave, he'd be ostracized by his family, practically shunned, wouldn't he? He was bound by chains to his job, a prisoner to his work. How could he escape that and still remain peaceful with his family? She touched his hand, her eyes serious. "Go to the doctor about your stomach. Make sure there's nothing seriously wrong with you." The command flew from her beautiful lips. He was reminded about Mark telling him to do the same thing. Well, he'd think about doing that. He supposed it wouldn't hurt to go to the doctor for a checkup. He doubted there was anything seriously wrong. He nodded. Okay. Well, that was enough talk about his life. There was one thing he wanted to know about her life before they started their business meeting. "Are you dating Thomas?" Her mouth dropped open. "You're kidding, right?" He shook his head. "Looked like I might have interrupted the two of you at the singles meeting last week." "No, he was asking me out." I was telling him no. Rachel was trying to get me to go out with him. She folded her arms in front of her chest. "I don't want to date Thomas." "Are you good friends with him?" "No, not really. We work in the same building, but he works for another company. I saw him reading his Bible in the cafeteria. It had been such a long time since I'd seen someone reading a print copy of the Bible in public. I approached him and introduced myself. We chatted, and he invited me to the singles meeting." He shrugged. "So I attended, and there you were." He paused for a few seconds, gathered his thoughts. "You know, I just think it means something, running into you 4 times within the last few weeks. Do you agree?" She pursed her mouth. She refused to meet his direct stare. "Well, this is a business meeting. Let's talk business. What is it you wanted to tell me about my pie?" He wanted to talk about them, and she just couldn't talk about that. Not yet anyway. She didn't want to get too personal. She needed to wait, digest his being there, in her bakery, eating pie. While he'd been gobbling pie, sipping coffee, it had almost seemed as if they were on a date. But they weren't, and she forced herself to remember that. She'd studied him while he'd sipped his coffee. He'd aged a bit since they'd broken up. His handsome chocolate-brown face appeared tired, worn. She even noticed some gray hair on his head. Imagine that, seeing gray hair, and he wasn't even 30 yet. He wasn't as big as he used to be, as if he'd lost a few pounds. Well, she knew his problem, that rich, crazy family. His job was making him sick, literally, and he needed to leave those crazy people, that crazy job, and strike out on his own. Well, if she sat there staring at him long enough, she didn't know if she'd be able to resist the urge to kiss him. Her attraction to him was so real, so strong, almost as if she were a piece of metal being drawn to a magnet. While with him, she just couldn't control herself if they got too personal. She pressed her hands together underneath the table. Focus on business. That's what they were here to do. "So what about my pie?" she repeated. He blinked, looked at the pie. It looked like he'd forgotten about the purpose of the meeting already. "Oh yes. As you know, my company relocated their office to downtown Crystal Spring. We're expanding our line of foods for supermarkets." He cleared his throat, looked directly at her. "Almarte might even be interested in carrying our new food products." "Almarte? Really? That's a big deal." "Yes, it is. I think your pie would be perfect for this." He gestured toward her blue ribbons. "The fact that you have a blue ribbon recipe, especially the French competition win, will work in your favor. We can place your credentials on the pie box as a marketing tactic." He took a deep breath. "The food scientists would need to taste your pie, get the recipe from you, and then alter it so that it has a longer shelf life. I was thinking it'd be great to commercialize your banana cream pie. I figure we'd sell it in the refrigerated food section." Visions of her dream house popped into her mind. She again recalled all the good times she'd shared with her parents. Those chandeliers, granite counters, and exotic wood floors were calling her name. She smiled, took a deep breath. Perhaps this was an answer to her prayers. "How much money are we talking about?" He shrugged. "I can't predict, but it could be thousands of dollars." He quoted a figure and her eyes rounded. "That much?" she gasped. He shrugged. "That's if my dad and the rest of the executives agree." "Hold up." She raised her hand toward him in a stopping motion. She'd been so eager to get the funds for a down payment for her dream house that she'd not been thinking clearly. She eyed Sam. He seemed haggard, worn, and overworked. She'd never been a big fan of Sam's family. They were judgmental, rude, and felt as if they owned the world. They'd acted like she was the scum of the earth simply because she'd been poor, had been raised in foster care, and had no college aspirations. No way could she get into a business deal with the Richardsons. She didn't know much about working with a company as large as Richardson Enterprises, but she had to wonder if she'd have to work with Sam once her product rolled out. She cleared her throat, sat up straighter in her chair, looked directly into Sam's dark, mesmerizing eyes. "No way on this God's-given earth can I consider going into business with your family. You hear me?" Chapter 9, 1 week since her business meeting with Sam. They'd exchanged phone numbers and he'd been calling her before she went to bed every night. She had a strict rule, though. No talk about the past and no talking about the business proposal. She needed to think about it for a bit. They mostly talked about their day. She'd tell him about how many customers had come into her shop that day. She also mentioned that she was experimenting with new recipes while she tried to make her shop more profitable. He'd asked her to go out to the movies with him the previous Friday night, but she'd declined. Talking to him on the phone every night had been a huge leap of faith for her. She'd found herself looking at the phone every night, hoping and praying it would ring. Her heart would skip as soon as Sam called her. Amidst Sam's phone calls, her mind had been heavy with thoughts about his business proposal all week, so heavy that she thought her skull would crack. She cracked an egg against a bowl, took a whisk and twirled it around the bowl as fast as she could. She beat the egg for so long that it had gotten high and frothy. "You're beating the crap out of that egg. What's wrong?" Rachel sauntered into the kitchen, her dark eyes curious. "Nothing's wrong. Just beating an egg for my pies." She tilted her head toward the 10 uncooked blueberry pies lining the counter. She took a pastry brush, dipped it into the beaten egg. She then painted each pie with egg wash. She then sprinkled each pie with a liberal amount of white sugar. She then took the tray of pies, slammed them into the hot oven, set the timer. Sweat beaded her brow, so she wiped it away with a clean towel, trudged to the front of the bakery. Rachel was right behind her. It was 9:30, so the breakfast crowd had cleared out. She'd tried a new recipe for lemon cream donuts. The donuts had been a hit. They'd sold out within a half hour, so she'd be sure to make a double batch the following morning. She poured a cup of coffee and sat at a table. Rachel joined her with a plate of donuts and some coffee. "You don't want a donut?" She gestured toward the treats. "No, I'm good with my coffee." "You haven't been eating right all week, skipping meals, and you've been cranky. What's wrong?" "Nothing you can help me with." It always helps to talk. Have you prayed about it? She'd prayed about it all week. During their nightly phone calls, she'd been tempted to tell Sam about her childhood home and her passion for purchasing the first place where she'd known true happiness. But something had held her back. She wasn't sure why she had not told Sam about her dream house. She'd been having dreams about him and about her parents. She'd been dreaming about her mom and dad and about how much fun they'd had in that big house. She'd also been looking at her projected income. The house was still listed for sale, which was a good thing. Sam had attended the singles group again last week. Patty-Lynn had again provided the refreshments. She'd baked peach tarts with fresh whipped cream. The way they'd been attending the group, you'd think they worshipped at Rachel's church. Rachel had jokingly suggested that she switch churches since she enjoyed the singles fellowship so much. Rachel finished her donut, took a swig of coffee. Does this have anything to do with Sam? I noticed him talking to you for a long time after singles meeting last week. She sighed. No sense in hiding things from Rachel. Yes, he's been calling me every night. You're thinking about dating him again? She shook her head. No, don't think so. Oh, might as well tell Rachel what had happened. While she sipped her coffee, she told Rachel every detail about her business meeting with Sam. So I don't know if I want to be connected with that family in any way. Patty-Lynn, this is wonderful. She blinked, put her empty coffee cup aside. It is? How? Well, you want your house, right? Yeah, but I don't want to work with that family. Rachel took her hand, squeezed her fingers. I'm your best friend. I know what's best for you. You've been working hard, saving your money to get your dream home. Sam is making you a possible offer. Go ahead and take him up on it. I'm sure once you sign the contract and if they put your pies in stores, you won't have to deal with them very much. I'm sure they have an accounting department that'll remit the payments to you. Your only reminder would be the Richardson trademark on the box. Would it be that simple? Rachel, I don't know. This is a business decision, nothing more. Now, be honest with me. Do you hope that you and Sam can start dating again? Might as well be honest with her. I doubt we could, but I'm attracted to him. That's why this is hard. If they want to put my pie on the market, I'm sure I'd need to meet with people in the company, namely Sam and his dad. His dad would probably veto the idea as soon as he finds out it's my pie. I don't know about that. You'd once mentioned to me that Sam's dad is a shrewd businessman. He's not going to see you as a person. He'd be mentally counting the dollars they could make from your secret pie recipe. She frowned. You think so? She nodded. Some customers breezed into the bakery, interrupting their conversation. Rachel squeezed her hand before she went behind the counter. Maybe she could bite the bullet and just see what happened. She pulled her phone from her pocket and dialed Sam's number. Patty-Lynn? His deep, sexy voice held a note of hesitation. Well, he could rest assured that he'd like what she had to say. Sam, let's try and do this pie thing. See what happens with it. Really? Yeah, really. Oh, thank you, Jesus. His voice lifted, as if happiness filled his soul. First thing we need to do is set up a meeting. His deep voice droned into the phone. She could barely pay attention. Her mind buzzed so much. Maybe it was time for her to move forward with her life, try and make a boatload of money from her commercialized pie. Lord, please be with me. I'm scared, Lord, and I hope I'm making the right decision. Sam ended his call with Patty-Lynn. Wow, he couldn't believe it. His phone buzzed. Dad, again. Well, at least he had some good news to share. Dad. His stomach clenched. What if his dad didn't like Patty-Lynn's pies? Sam, are you ready for the meeting later this week? Do you have any ideas for a product? Lord, please let my dad like my idea. I do. I'd rather not tell you until the meeting. I'll bring a sample over to you. His dad was making the trip over for this meeting instead of doing it via conference call. Okay, It better be good. I'm anxious to hear about your idea. I'll call your admin to set up a good time for the meeting." His dad ended the call. He popped 2 Tums into his mouth. He had a doctor's appointment that afternoon. He was sick of eating Tums. An hour later, his phone buzzed with an email. His admin confirmed that the meeting would be held in 4 days. "You have a stomach ulcer." The doctor looked at his chart, giving Sam the news. His eyes were kind as he nodded his gray-haired head. "What? Why would I have an ulcer?" This had to be some sort of joke. Lots of things can cause it, like taking a lot of painkillers like ibuprofen. It can also be caused by a bacterial infection. Stress can make an ulcer even worse. Are you under any stress? Life was just one big stressful event. Just getting out of bed in the morning to go to work was stressful. How could one avoid making a living? "Yeah, lots of things are stressful, but I learned to deal with it." The doctor wrote a prescription before he turned to a fresh sheet of paper. "You'll need to watch your diet. Certain things aggravate an ulcer." He began writing down foods to avoid. "Also, if you want to reduce your stress, maybe take a vacation. If your job is causing you stress, you might want to consider finding a new job." He ripped the papers from his prescription pad and handed them over to Sam. "Doctor, I have a question." "Go on." "I already told you that my stomach hurts when I eat sometimes. I notice if I eat some things like banana cream pie, I can eat a lot of it without getting sick. But my stomach will hurt later after eating it." He nodded. "Milk-based products are easier on your stomach when you have an ulcer. That's why you didn't get sick when you ate the pie. The milk coats the stomach, but later it produces more acid, which can aggravate your ulcer." He cleared his throat. "I want to see you in a few weeks. Make an appointment with my receptionist." As he stopped at the receptionist's desk, making his appointment, visions of Patty-Lynn filled his mind. He then recalled his father's stern face, showing little to no emotion. He craved his father's kind words, wanted him to approve of his hard work for the company. However, he doubted that would happen. His dad was so reserved, so stern, so judgmental. He was miserable, and his father's nature made Sam miserable. On the way home from the doctor's office, he stopped at the grocery store. He visited the pharmacy. He then got the food he'd need to specially prepare, no hot spices, kind of bland. The doctor had been emphatic about his following this special diet until his ulcer healed up. Finally, home. After such an exhausting day, it was nice to be home, away from the office. He took the elevator up to his condo and carried in his bags of groceries. Once he'd put his groceries away, he opened a package of boneless, skinless chicken breasts. These should last him for a few meals. He broiled the meat and ate it with mixed veggies and oatmeal bread. The doctor had told him to not use much salt, so his meal tasted bland. Once he was done eating, he sighed with relief, glad that his stomach didn't cramp up as much afterwards. He'd forgotten to ask the doctor how long it would take for the ulcer to heal up, so he Googled it and discovered it'd take anywhere from 2 to 8 weeks. He then went outside onto his deck. He kept the outside light off and enjoyed the darkness. The wind blew, and crickets chanted over the hot night air. It'd be nice if Patty-Lynn could sit out here with him, beside him, and they could hold hands. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the display. Patty-Lynn. He answered the call. "Hi, Patty-Lynn. Are you okay?" "Yeah, but you don't sound okay. What's wrong?" Should he tell her about the ulcer? Can I come to your place?" He really wanted to talk to her right now. "Oh, Sam, my place is a mess. I've been testing pie recipes all evening. Haven't had time to clean my place all week. I've been so busy." Since he had a cleaning lady who took care of those things, he never had to worry about that. "I don't care about the way your place looks. I just want to see you." He had a better idea. "Did you want to come to my place?" He recited the address. "It's only about a half hour from your pie shop." Silence. She wasn't going to come. Well, that was okay. He'd be content talking to her on the phone. "I'm on my way." Her sweet southern voice was barely a whisper. Patty-Lynn took a quick shower and freshened up. She put on her sundress and leather sandals, the same outfit she'd worn when she'd run into Sam at their first singles meeting. He'd wanted her to come by. He didn't want to talk business. This was personal. She could feel it. Their attraction was just too strong to ignore, and he wanted to say something about it. Sam was a man who spoke his mind. He might not do it initially, but he'd say something eventually. She drove to his home. Her mouth dropped open, and she gawked at the exquisite condominium building. An automatic sprinkler squirted water over the grass. Sam waited for her in the lobby, and he let her inside. He took her hands and stared at her with his mesmerizing dark eyes. He kissed her cheek. "Come on up. I have so much that I want to say to you." He took her hand, and they rode up the elevator in silence. She had lots to say to him, too, but she figured she'd give him first dibs on telling what was on his mind. After all, he sounded so upset on the phone. Probably something to do with his blasted family again. Her hand felt warm and cozy in his huge palm. He opened the door and she followed him inside. She tried not to gawk at the bamboo floors and the chandelier hanging from the ceiling. As he led her toward the back entrance, she peeked at the large, massive kitchen. "You cook much?" He'd never cooked much when they were dating, but things could always change. He shook his head. "No. Besides, I need to start watching my diet." "Why?" He gestured toward the deck. "Come on out. I'll explain." She followed him outside. She could get a good look at the kitchen later. She figured he had something heavy on his mind, so she may as well listen to him since he was willing to talk. A large fire burned in the outdoor fire pit. Orange and golden flames shot into the night air. Crickets chirped in the wind. He gestured toward the candles flickering near their chairs. "I lit some citronella candles, so we won't be bothered by mosquitoes." "Okay, that's mighty nice of you, Sam. Thanks." She made herself comfortable in the two-seater lawn chair, but Sam continued standing. "Did you want something to eat? Something to drink?" "I have a whole bunch of food in the kitchen, and if you don't see anything you'd like, I could always go out and get something for you." She shook her head. They needed to just forget the formalities and cut to the chase. "I'd rather you just sit down and tell me what's on your mind." He nodded before he plopped into the chair beside her, took her hand. "Well, good news first. The meeting for the executives to taste your pie is 4 days away." She raised her eyebrows as her heart skipped. "So soon?" "I'm pleased but shocked." He nodded. "My dad arranged it. It'd be great if Almarte agreed to carry your pie in their stores. It sure would be mighty nice to see that." He paused and licked his lips. "Now for the bad news. I'm sick." Her mouth dropped open. "You got cancer or something?" Her heart sped up. How awful would that be to see Sam suffering on top of everything else going on in his life? "No, nothing like that." He quickly eased her fears. "I have a stomach ulcer." "Well, that ain't so bad, is it? Don't you got to watch your diet? Take some medicine or something?" He raised his eyebrows. "Yeah, how'd you know? You've had one before?" "Nope. Friend of mine from church had one a while back. She told me about it, so this stomach ulcer has got you down, huh?" He nodded. "The doctor implied that it's stress-related. I noticed it flares up really bad when my dad calls. Sometimes I have trouble digesting my food. I need to do something about it, but I'm not sure what." He looked directly into her eyes, and her stomach dipped with delight. "I like you, Patty-Lynn. I love talking to you on the phone every night. I'm falling for you all over again. I wanted to know if you'd be open to giving our relationship another chance." Another chance? Was he serious? Chapter 10. She dropped his hand as if she'd been burned. Not a good sign at all. It looked like he needed to reason with her. "Patty-Lynn, you shouldn't be surprised. I kissed you when we had our business meeting. I made a point to talk to you, spend time with you at the singles meetings. I've been talking to you every night on the phone for the past week. Until a few seconds ago, we were sitting here holding hands." He swallowed. Might as well tell her the truth. I've been dreaming about you, remembering the good times we shared. I really care about you. Don't start with that talk about caring. You're just upset, vulnerable right now, reaching out to me because your family's making you sick. Being with me just makes you feel better. That's it. You ain't serious about caring about me. He blinked. He needed to tread lightly and figure out how to handle this. Lord, help me. I messed things up, big time, the first time I dated Patty-Lynn. He took a deep breath. Share your faith. The words popped into his mind like kernels of corn. The last time he'd tried to get personal with her, during their business meeting, she'd changed the subject. Well, she'd need to stay and listen this time. He needed to share his faith journey. I'm so sorry that I hurt you in the past. At the time, I thought I was doing you a favor. Did you know that you affected my marriage? She cocked her head to the side, furrowed her cute eyebrows. Really? How so? Lorena could tell that my mind always seemed to be on something else, someone else. She demanded to know if I was still in love with you. I admitted that I was, and she threatened to leave me. We went to counseling and worked things out. In time, I did grow to love her and respect her as my wife. He took a deep breath. Patty-Lynn remained quiet. She stared at the fire, but he could tell that she was listening. Good. At least he had her attention. When she was diagnosed with breast cancer, well, that's when both of us started our faith journey. I'd always been to church with my family, did the right things, said the right things during services, but my heart was never really in it. He stopped speaking and took a deep breath. We started going to this small church a few miles from our home. Both of us actually read the Bible cover to cover for the first time. It was like a light bulb went off in our heads, and we finally got it. Jesus died for us, and we'd have everlasting life. Can you imagine that? He swallowed. Both of us got saved, and I know Lorena is in heaven now. I know she'd want me to be happy and move on. I have faith in the Lord, and that's what's helping me through Lorena's death. She remained quiet, staring at the fire. She leaned back into the seat and closed her eyes. He remembered this, how she'd be before saying something meaningful or important. She always closed her eyes for a few minutes, as if she needed total concentration to gather her thoughts. I found Christ about a year after you broke up with me. I was bitter, angry that things didn't work out between us. Started going to church with Miriam. She was my boss at the bakery, and her daughter Jessica. I finally accepted Christ. I know I need him. But even though you accept Christ, life can still be tough. Know what I mean? Did he ever? Yeah, I know. What about your folks? They accept your beliefs? He shrugged. To tell you the truth, I feel like my family is kind of lost. Really? How so? Well, my mom and dad seemed puzzled when I accepted Christ and said I was saved. They claimed that I'd been saved since they'd had me baptized as a baby. I explained to them that I'd accepted him into my heart, accepted his gift. I wasn't able to consciously do that as an infant. I now fully appreciate him as my savior, and that's important to me. My mom just said that was nice, and she went on to another subject. My dad and my sister said nothing. He shrugged. I wasn't sure what else I could say. I pray that they'll develop a deep relationship with God. She nodded. Amen. I'll be praying for them too. He took her hand again. Thankfully, she didn't pull away. So where's that leave us, Sam? What are we going to do now? Patty, Lynn, I enjoy spending time with you. I really like you. I'm falling for you again. Can we just be friends for now? Get to know each other better? 7 years is a long time, and I think we need to reconnect for a little while, if that's okay with you. What about your folks? If we decide to go further with this, would they be willing to accept me, just as I am? If they don't accept me, would you dump me like you did before? No. The response shot out of his mouth like a cannon. Honey, I'm so sorry about all that's happened. He squeezed her hand. If we decide that we want to be a couple, then I'll be by your side every step of the way. Really? Yes, really. He leaned toward her. planted a kiss on her soft cheek. He walked Patty-Lynn to her car, again kissed her cheek. Longing, thick and coarse, ran through him like a river. He wanted to kiss that sweet, rosebud-shaped mouth. But he just didn't know if he could stop at one kiss. Being in his home alone with her was hard, too hard. After she'd left, gladness swept through him. Although it was well after midnight, he put on his running shoes, took a good long run. While exercising, he was reminded of his college days running for the school's track and field team. When he returned to his house, he took a cold shower, drank some water before going to bed, making sure he turned his alarm off. For once in years, he didn't want to be awakened by his alarm clock. He slept soundly. The sound of his vibrating phone woke him up around 8 o'clock. It was his dad. He texted his father, stating he wasn't going to be in the office for the next 2 days, but he'd still be at the business meeting later that week. He needed to be sure everybody tasted the pie. He then emailed his admin, letting her know he'd be out of the office for the next 2 days. His dad called and texted him several times that morning. He then took it upon himself to do something that he had not done in years. He turned his phone off. No way did he want disturbances. If an emergency really occurred, he was sure that someone would call him on his landline. He traipsed to his kitchen, got a big glass of ice water, took a seat at one of the stools surrounding the center island. He bowed his head and closed his eyes. Lord, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I know I've been forgiven for my sins, but I know that my past actions hurt Patty-Lynn. Lord, if it's your will, please, help us to work things out. Please open Patty-Lynn's eyes. Let her see that I'm a changed Christian man, and I'd never knowingly hurt her. Please be with her. Help her to have a nice, peaceful, happy day. Amen. He drank his water and returned to his bedroom. Good thing the cleaning lady wasn't due that day because he needed this time alone with no interruptions. He spent the day fasting, praying, thinking about his family, recalling his aborted romance with Patty-Lynn. He also recalled her blunt, open honesty, her kindness. She'd always worried about him, made sure he was okay, wanted to know if there was anything she could do to help whenever he was upset about something. She'd been there for him as a true friend. Although he'd grown to love his wife Lorena, he'd always regretted how things ended between him and Patty-Lynn. Now, hopefully, he had the opportunity, God willing, to make things right. As the sun started to set late that evening, he went out onto his deck, enjoyed the wonderful view, continued to think about Patty-Lynn. He was attracted to her. He didn't think it was a good idea to be alone with her in his home. If he started kissing her on the mouth, and she returned his kiss, and both of them got aroused, he shook his head. He couldn't let those carnal thoughts enter his mind. He had to pick up the banana cream pies day after tomorrow for his taste test business meeting. After that, he'd hoped to see her at the singles group. She'd been coming every week, so he planned on asking her if it was okay for them to go out for coffee after the singles meeting each week. That would give them a nice, platonic way to get to know one another again. Since things didn't work out for them the first time, hopefully, that would change the second time. Rachel rushed into the kitchen, taking deep breaths. "Sam's here," she whispered, pointing toward the front. She obviously didn't want him to know how excited she was. Rachel had been hoping that Richardson Enterprises would be able to mass-produce Patty-Lynn's pie. Since she'd met with Sam at his place, she'd been agonizing over their meeting for the last couple of days, coming to terms with her feelings for him. He had not called her the last couple of nights, so she wasn't sure if he'd changed his mind about her. Maybe he felt that it would be best for things to be strictly business between them. She'd also gone to visit her house. She'd studied the immaculate yard and again reminisced about living there. Although the house was a bit large for one person, she still wanted to buy it. Just being at the house made her feel closer to her parents. The for sale sign remained in the yard, and she'd called the realtor earlier to see if there was any interest shown in the house. He'd said that a family had been interested, but he doubted they'd make an offer. He'd claimed their interest was modest, and that they were viewing several homes in the area. Patty-Lynn, hurry up. Sam's waiting and you don't want him to be late for the meeting. Tell him I'll be there in a minute. Rachel rushed away. Patty-Lynn opened the huge refrigerator and removed the banana cream pies. She put 3 pies into a box and carried it to the front. She placed the box onto the counter before she spotted Sam standing in front of the window, staring out into the street. Since his back was turned to her, he probably didn't realize she'd come into the room. He sported a dark, expensive, tailor-made suit, and from the looks of the back of his head, it appeared he'd recently gotten a haircut. He turned his head slightly, and she got a peek at his handsome profile. This man was so gorgeous. She could just sit and stare at him all day. Well, now was not the time for staring. He needed to get these pies to his business meeting. Sam? Her voice came out sounding nervous, a bit squeaky. Drat. She didn't want to sound like that when talking to Sam. He slowly turned around, and he grinned. Patty-Lynn. He came toward her and pulled her into a hug, kissed her forehead. It's so good to see you again. You too. You look nice, good, happy. He seemed different than the last time she'd seen him, as if he'd taken a happiness pill or something. Since he'd kissed her forehead, it appeared he was still interested in her. I'm just a bit surprised since I hadn't heard from you in the last couple of days. Honey, I needed some time alone. I'm sorry I didn't tell you that. His dark eyes twinkled as he looked at her. You look beautiful. Her skin warmed from his heartfelt compliment. She gulped. Whew! Just being near him made it hard for her to speak. Thanks. She gestured to the box she'd set on the counter. Here are the pies. I hope they like them. He nodded and checked his Rolex watch. I'll call you. This will take a while, so they might not make a final decision for mass production for a month. He hefted the box into his strong arms. Do you mind if we go out for coffee after the singles meeting next week? She nodded. Of course we can. She didn't want to wait until next week to see him again. However, she sensed that taking things slow would work better. It gave her some time to digest their slow-moving relationship. Great. I'll call you tonight. She held the door open for him, and he gave her a quick peck on the cheek before he rushed to his Lexus down the street. Chapter 11. Sam pulled into the parking garage of his office building. He pulled the cooler from the back seat. He knew the pies needed to stay cold in order for them to taste their best. He hefted the red and white cooler into his arms and made his way to the lobby. Hi, Mr. Richardson. What's in the cooler? The security guard grinned, pointed toward the cooler. He returned the man's smile. Banana cream pie. If there's any left over, I'll bring you a slice. He strolled toward the elevator, joy singing in his heart. He set the cooler onto the floor, pressed the button for the top floor. He hadn't felt this good in a long time. The doors opened, and he spotted his father at the receptionist's desk, glaring into the hallway. Well, he needed to remember to trust God, not be in fear of his father. Sure, he wished his dad were more approving of all that he'd done, but he'd decided he couldn't control his father's actions. Hi, Dad. His father's bald head shined as he nodded toward him. Folks were always commenting that his dad looked a lot younger than 65. Hi, son. You're late. 5 minutes. There'd been an accident, so traffic had been held up. He didn't even bother explaining that to his dad. Sam nodded toward the cooler. Well, is everybody ready to sample the pie? Yes. His father gestured toward the conference room. Sam hefted the cooler into the room, scanned the 10 occupants. He nodded to all of them, placed the cooler on the side. He then went to each of them, shook their hand. Lord, please be with me. Let them like the pie, be so enamored with it that they'll do their best to make it commercially available to consumers. Thanks for coming. I know we've been trying to find some new products to feature in our frozen food line. We've already added apple pie and blueberry pie. I want you to taste this banana cream pie. Let me know what you think. Visions of Patty-Lynn, her cute pale face, freckles sprinkled across her nose, played in his mind as he sliced into the pie. He cut slices and offered them around the table. Son, this is delicious. The praise in his father's voice made him pause. His stomach felt a bit upset, so he didn't indulge in the pie with the others. "This is excellent," one of the consultants praised. She gobbled another bite, and a glob of whipped cream fell onto her finger. She closed her eyes, popped her finger into her mouth. He couldn't control himself. He laughed. He had enough pie to serve everyone a second helping. He continued his presentation with a slideshow. He dimmed the lights and went through a show of all of the cream pies that were currently on the market. Most don't taste like the one you just sampled. They have very little custard and just a bunch of whipped cream, not much substance. After he'd completed telling about the few pies on the market, his father cleared his throat. "Do you honestly think our lab consultants," he gestured around the room, "will be able to replicate this pie so that it tastes the same for mass production? Frozen for a long shelf life?" All of the banana cream pies on the market were sold frozen. The consumer would then thaw the pie out before consumption. He focused on his father. "I'm not sure, but I think we should try. You have the recipe?" He nodded. "Of course. I need to talk to you about it after the meeting." He cleared his throat. This pie has won a lot of pie competitions. He paused, wanting to build up some anticipation for what he had to say next. This pie also won the cream pie category of the French International Pie Competition. "Really?" His dad's dark eyes gleamed as he popped the last bite of pie into his mouth. Sam knew that look. It was a look of hunger his father got whenever he'd found a possible way to bring more money into their company. After all of the consultants had taken their exit, he returned to the table, sat beside his father. "I have the recipe with me. Actually, the pie is made by a bakery that's not very far from here." His dad grunted and raised his eyebrows. "That would be beneficial. We could always put the name of the bakery as part of the name of the pie. A marketing strategy. Know what I mean? Makes it seem more like a home-baked good. Also, the fact that it won the French competition is an ace in the hole. Do you agree?" He nodded. "Of course I do." His heart lifted a bit, seeing how his dad enjoyed the pie. He figured having Patty's cute face on the box, Patty-Lynn's banana cream pie, would be scrawled across the box. They'd also play up the fact that it won the French competition as well as several others. The Richardson Enterprises logo would be right beside it. He figured they could give consumers a coupon, encouraging them to purchase the pie. "So, which bakery?" His dad's voice interrupted his thoughts. "My friend Patty, Lynn Palmer, baked that pie. She owns a bakery, Patty's Pie Palace. It's her secret recipe." He frowned. Patty-Lynn. Why's that name familiar? "I dated her about a year before I married Lorena." His father's mouth dropped open, and his dark eyes snapped. "Patty-Lynn is that little white girl you were dating? You brought her to the house once, right?" He nodded. "Don't hold the past against her, Dad. That pie is good, and I know if we're able to market it, it'll sell. I know you're really concerned about the bottom line, dollars and cents. That pie will bring in more dollars than we can count if we can replicate the recipe for mass production. Patty-Lynn would also benefit. She'd get a royalty for each pie sold, so that should make her happy too." "Are you dating her again?" "Yes, I'm seeing her." Well, they were sort of seeing one another. He wasn't sure if they were actually dating. He sensed that Patty-Lynn still had cold feet about getting serious with him, and he didn't blame her, not one bit. His father shook his head, his eyes narrowing. "I can't believe you'd date that tramp." He came around the table, grabbed his father's arm, looked him directly into the eyes. "Don't you ever call her that again. Patty-Lynn is the sweetest, most honest woman I've ever met. So don't push me, Dad. That's not a good idea right now." He dropped his father's arm. No way was he going to let Patty-Lynn's reputation be run through the ringer by his family. Again, he recalled all that she'd confided to him while they dated 7 years ago. Her poor background, the deaths of her parents, her unhappy times living in foster homes. She'd been through so much, and she was tough and soft and sweet at the same time. Beneath those tough layers was a sweet, vulnerable woman who just ached to be loved by somebody. He'd loved her, and then he'd hurt her so badly. Well, he was falling for Patty-Lynn all over again, and he wasn't going to let his family dominate his life any longer. His life was now dominated by the Lord. Granted, he'd been saved for a few years now, but he'd still lived his life in fear, cowering to his father, being at his beck and call. Well, his health was at risk, and he needed to live a healthier lifestyle. Well, he was taking the next step to changing his life tomorrow. If his dad knew what he'd planned on doing, he'd be stunned. For once, his dad proved speechless. He wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not, but he knew that it was his signal to leave. He peered into his father's face. We can talk about this later. He needed some time alone, and he'd rather talk to his father after he'd had some time to think about what else he needed to say. Besides, he had a few things that he needed to prepare that night for his next day's adventure. He'd already told his admin that he was not coming into the office tomorrow. Samuel Richardson? Sam looked up from the job application he'd been filling out. The receptionist gave him a warm smile. "You may go in now." She gestured to the open door down the hallway. He returned her grin. "Thanks." He took the short journey down the hall and took deep breaths. "Lord, help me." He entered the room as sweat beaded his forehead. He took another deep breath. He needed to calm his nerves and stop being so jittery. "Good afternoon, Sam. I'm Lyle Russell." Sam nodded. "Good to meet you." They shook hands while Lyle gestured toward the empty chair in front of his desk. Sam settled into the seat and gave his application to Lyle. The older man cleared his throat. "I admit, I was surprised to see your application for the marketing executive position." Sam nodded, agreeing with Lyle. Billy's, a regional fast food chain, was looking for a marketing executive. He'd found the position the previous week when he'd taken 2 days off from work and had been fasting. The position seemed like a perfect fit, and he hoped to get the job. "Yes, I feel I'd be a perfect fit for your company. I'm curious, though. I know your family owns Richardson Enterprises. Why are you looking to leave your family's business?" Sam cleared his throat. No way was he going to tell Lyle everything that had been going on between him and his family. His familial struggles stretched back to childhood. However, he was willing to share a few vague details. He certainly didn't want Lyle to know about the disharmony he shared with his dad. He figured those facts would scare him off, make him think that he'd be an unstable employee. "I'm making some changes in my life, and I feel that I need a more challenging and fulfilling position in a new company." Prayerfully, he told Lyle what he needed to hear. Chapter 12. "Where are you looking so blue, Patty-Lynn? You're seeing Sam after singles tonight, so you should be smiling, not frowning." Her eyes teared. She swallowed. She was stronger than this. She was used to disappointment. But if she were so strong, then why'd she feel so fragile right now? She pressed her shaky hands together and took several deep breaths. Why hadn't the realtor called her to deliver this news? She stared at the computer screen, her mind spinning with dread. She stared at her beloved house, the one she'd been hoping to purchase. Rachel scurried over, eyed the computer screen. She gasped. "That's your house? The one you were hoping to buy?" She blew air through her lips and swiped her tears away. "Yes, that's my house. It's gone now and I can't even make an offer. Even if Richardson Enterprises commercializes my pie, I still can't buy the house." Rachel pulled her into a tight hug. "Please stop crying. You have memories of being with your folks in that house. Those precious memories are more important than having the house itself." "Easy for you to say." She swiped her tears again. "That realtor didn't even call to tell me either. Patty-Lynn, he's a businessman. He knew you didn't have the money to buy the house. He was only in contact with you just in case you came up with the funds. Or he probably wanted to see if he could interest you in another house. That man just wants his commission." "Yep, you're probably right." She sat up straighter and forced her tears to stop. No need to keep acting like a baby. Heck, she rarely got anything she really wanted in life, so she should be used to disappointment by now. She stared at the big red sold sign scrolled across the screen. I can stop dreaming. Don't ever stop dreaming. Girl, you've come a long way. Your dreams and your faith in the Lord are what helps you to move forward with your life. Rachel sat beside her and took her hand. You can always buy another house. It doesn't have to be that one. But my mom and dad, I have so many great memories of living there with them. Her mom had cleaned those rooms with pride. Sometimes, when she was a kid, she'd pretended that that house had even belonged to them. She blinked the tears away. She couldn't get emotional over this, but couldn't help herself. I'm so sorry, Patty-Lynn. Rachel squeezed her fingers. She nodded, glad to have her friend's emotional support. Thanks, Rachel. I guess I'm overreacting. It's just that, with the market being so slow, and with my pie being considered at Richardson's, I thought something magical would happen, and I'd be able to somehow buy that house. So what's going on with Richardson's? Any word yet? She shook her head. No, not yet. It had been 3 weeks since Sam had presented his project to the folks at Richardson's. During that time, they'd been dating, having coffee together after their singles group. It had been nice, getting to know Sam again. He was the same guy she dated 7 years ago, but different, too. He was like a grown-up version of the man she used to date. Rachel continued holding her hand and gave her a small smile. Well, maybe Sam will have some good news about that. It might cheer you up. A customer breezed into the shop, and Rachel hopped out of her chair so that she could wait on the customer. As she went through her day, Patty-Lynn thought about her parents, the house, and the time she'd been spending with Sam. Over the last 3 weeks, he'd started growing on her, dominating her thoughts. In such a short period of time, she was falling for him again, falling for him hard. He was the first person she thought about in the morning, and the last person she thought about before going to bed at night. After closing the bakery, she helped Rachel to wrap up the leftovers to be sold at half price the following day. After they'd mopped the floor, they headed out the door. Patty-Lynn locked the door. Her shoulders weighed with fatigue. After she'd gone home, showered, ate a light dinner, she drove to the singles meeting, yawning the entire way. She pulled into the parking lot and spotted Sam. He lounged against his Lexus and held a bouquet of roses. He looked downright gorgeous. He had on a deep blue short-sleeved shirt and tan shorts. Just seeing his brown muscled arms and calves made her feel safe. A few of the women stopped and openly stared at him before going into the church. Suddenly, the unwelcome tears welled in her eyes. Sam came toward her, clutching the bouquet. Hey, sweetheart, what's wrong? He leaned into her open window and kissed her cheek. Sam, you know that house I wanted to buy? He nodded. Well, it was sold. I really wished that I could get that house. She shook her head. I know there was no guarantee that I'd get it. I'm so sorry, Patty-Lynn. His deep voice dripped with sympathy. I wish there was something that I could say to make you feel better. Sam glanced at the church. Singles was about to start, but she really didn't have the heart to go inside right now. Since she'd started dating Sam, she'd mentioned her dream of buying a home, but she'd never told him about living at that house with her parents. Sure, he knew about her being orphaned at 7 and going down south to live, but there were some things that she'd not shared with him, so she figured he needed to know how much that house meant to her. Sam, you mind if we skip singles? I wanted to talk to you about something. I have something important to tell you, too. You do? She eyed the flowers that he'd set on the passenger seat. Oh, no. Sam was going to break up with her again. They'd just gotten reacquainted, and now his family had found out they'd rekindled their relationship. Now they'd talked him into breaking up with her again. What you want to talk about? He mashed down his beautiful lips. Thoughts of kissing him raced through her mind before she pushed the thought away. She licked her lips, looked him straight in the eyes. You mad at me about something? His mouth dropped open. No, I just need to talk to you. She finally nodded, grabbed her flowers from the seat. Come on, I'll drive. Surprisingly, he got into the car without asking any questions. She really wanted to know what he had to say. "Look, Sam, there's something I wanted to show you. We can talk when we get there." "Okay." His dark eyes appeared worried as she pulled out of the parking lot. She made the journey to the coffee shop and went through the drive-through window. She ordered iced coffee for herself and iced herbal tea for Sam. Sam gave her the money for their drinks. After they had their drinks, she pulled onto the main road, and 15 minutes later, she parked in front of her beloved house. She opened all of the windows as well as the sunroof on her car. Crickets chirped in the night air. A gentle breeze blew, and the sold signs swayed in the warm night air. The scent of blooming roses carried on the wind. She sipped her coffee. The chicory sweetness made her feel a little bit better. Sam reached over and took her hand. He squeezed her fingers. "I noticed your eyes are red. You look like you've been crying." His deep, wonderful voice filled the car. Amidst her sadness, a thread of joy skimmed through her soul. Joy that Sam was actually here with her right now, in her car, while they sat in front of her house. She gestured across the street. "That's the house I wanted to buy. I never told you why that house means so much to me." She closed her eyes for a few minutes and gathered her thoughts. When she finally opened her eyes, she took a sip of coffee. She then told him all about the memories she'd shared with her parents in that house. While they sipped their drinks, she spoke non-stop for an hour. Occasionally, Sam would interrupt with a question. She also showed Sam the picture she had of her and her parents standing outside of the house. Once she was done speaking, they'd finished their drinks. "That's why that house means so much to me, Sam." "Patty-Lynn, I'm so glad you told me. I wish there was something I could do to help you." She shook her head. She knew that Sam meant well. "Ain't nothing you can do, just your listening to me is important." Living in that house was one of the happiest times of my life. Her eyes teared again, but she blinked the moisture away. She'd cried enough for one day. She focused on what Rachel had told her earlier. Heck, she had memories of her folks. Good memories. At least her stomach wasn't in pain like Sam's. "How's your stomach? Still hurting?" He shook his head. "Actually, since I've started my diet and have been taking medicine, things have been going much better." She nodded. "That's good. So, what'd you want to talk to me about?" He took a deep breath. "The pie project is a bust." Her mouth dropped open. "Really? Why? How could this be?" "2 disappointments in one day. They simply could not replicate your pie recipe to be mass-produced and frozen. The pie just didn't taste the same. The scientists said the product didn't taste nearly as good as yours, and it was costly to produce. That might be why a lot of the banana cream pies on the market are full of cream and only a little custard. It's cheaper to produce them that way." Well, that was a bitter pill to swallow. She glanced at the sold sign as it swayed in the night breeze. Maybe it was best that her house had been sold. Maybe the new owner would find the love, peace, and happiness she'd experienced while living there. Besides, it'd be a long time before she'd save enough money for the down payment since the pie project was a bust. "Are you okay?" His deep, smooth voice was hypnotic and sweet, like hot fudge drizzled over a cool vanilla sundae. She leaned toward him and he hugged her. She inhaled the delicious, musky scent of his cologne. He kissed her forehead. "You feel better now?" She nodded. She felt better and exhausted. She figured she wouldn't have a hard time falling asleep that night. "If you ever have anything you want to tell me, don't hesitate. I know you act tough sometimes, as if you don't need any emotional support. But I know it's all an act. Being tough is how I survived living in those foster homes all those years. You ain't never been alone. Your family's always been there to back you up. Don't tell me how to act when you ain't never been in my situation." In spite of her growing feelings for Sam, she still wondered if they'd make a good match. There was so much about her that he'd never understand. Heck, there was lots about him she didn't understand either. She supposed they'd learn to understand each other eventually if they continued to date. "Is that the only thing you wanted to tell me?" "No, I've accepted a job. She raised her eyebrows, sat up straight. What you mean? You accepted a job? A job where? Marketing director for Billy's, the regional fast food chain. She gasped. You're leaving your family's company? What'd your daddy say? He shrugged. Nothing. I haven't told him yet. She swatted his shoulder. You ain't leaving your family's company. Once you tell your daddy, he'll make you feel guilty, and he'll have you back on board right away. He shook his head, his chocolate brown eyes serious. No, I'm not going to work for Richardson Enterprises, at least not for the time being. I need to be away from my dad's controlling influence. It was affecting my health. You going to call and tell him tomorrow? He shook his head. I'm making the 2-hour drive to my parents' house to tell him in person. He took her hand. I'd ask you to come with me, but I think it's best if I tell him this alone. He paused, eyed their joined hands. Something mighty heavy was on his mind, so she wished he'd just spill it out. He took a deep breath. I'd like to bring you to visit my parents and my sister. Meet them again. What about your grandmother, the one who hated me the most? It was hard to keep the bitter tone from her voice. She died. Heart attack. About 3 years ago. She dipped her head. I'm sorry, I didn't mean... He covered her lips with his strong brown fingers. Don't apologize. My grandmother was rude and rotten to you. My family treated you badly, and that was uncalled for. As I told you before, I'm not putting up with that mess ever again. Did he really mean that? She thought about his words as she drove back to the church for him to get his vehicle. She wondered about his family. Would they ever accept her? An even bigger question. Could she allow herself to be strong enough to have a long-term commitment to Sam? She was falling in love with him all over again. And being so emotionally connected to a person made her vulnerable for possible pain in the future. Chapter 13. Sam pushed his key into the lock of his parents' home. He closed the door behind him and scanned the familiar marble foyer. The chandelier dripped from the ceiling, and the scent of lemon oil filled the air. Sam. He turned toward Molly, their elderly housekeeper. Hi, Molly. The short, dark-skinned woman hugged him. To his mother's disdain, he'd spent a lot of time with Molly in the kitchen when he was younger. She'd thought it was a bad idea to get too friendly with the hired help. You been taking care of yourself? Trying to. He leaned toward her. Where's Dad? He's in his office. Your sister and your mother are at a charity event. They won't be back until midnight. Thanks, Molly. She left him alone in the foyer. He didn't want to see his mother and sister Kelly this evening. It was 8 p.m. He had a good long while to talk to his dad before making the 2-hour trek back to Crystal Spring. He'd called Molly earlier that day, making sure that his father would be at home. He didn't want him to know that he was coming. He knocked on his father's office door. Come in. He swung the door open. His dad sat behind his desk, sporting a robe and slippers. He sipped a drink, whiskey over ice. Speaking to his father here at the house, while he wore his robe and slippers, proved less intimidating than meeting in his downtown office. Son, I didn't realize you'd be here. He stood up, shocked surprise in his voice. Dad, I had to talk to you. He went over to the desk and shook his father's hand. He plopped into a seat. I wanted to catch you before you went to bed. Molly mentioned that you've been going to bed earlier lately. Yes, I've been tired, having to advise you with running the new office. He lifted his whiskey glass and took a large drink. Well, you won't have to worry about calling and checking up on me anymore. He frowned. What do you mean by that? I'm leaving the company, Dad. I got a job as an executive director of marketing at Billy's corporate office. His father dropped the glass, and it shattered onto the floor. The stench of alcohol filled the room. His mouth dropped open, eyes widening like saucers. Billy's? The fast food place? He nodded. Why? He whispered the word. His voice reminded Sam of coarse, rough sandpaper. Sam strolled to the window. He stared at the lights shining on their garden. Roses bloomed, and he opened the window. The stench of the whiskey was getting to him. He made a mental note to clean up the mess before he went home. He breathed. Those roses sure smelled good, good and sweet, just like Patty-Lynn. She wore a perfume that reminded him of the blooming rose bushes. He stared at the blossoms in the semi-darkness. I have a stomach ulcer. The doctor said stress could make it worse. He turned and looked directly at his father. My ulcer acts up when you call. I haven't been eating as well as I should, and my stomach was always bothering me. Richardson Enterprises bothers me. I don't want to work there. By staying there, you over my shoulder, makes me feel like a child. He paced around the office, barely paid attention to the diplomas lining the walnut-colored walls. He stopped pacing, looked directly at his father again. Dad, I'm almost 30 years old, but you treat me like I'm 16. He shook his head. You think I'm rough. Wait until you're out there in the working world. Your boss will be just as rough, if not tougher than I. He shrugged. Then so be it. Richardson Enterprises is all that I know. I want to see what else is out there. I refuse to accept your resignation. Dad, that's part of your problem. You can't control everything, he sighed. I'm resigning, but I realize that I'm still part owner of Richardson Enterprises. I'm willing to stay on as a consultant as time allows. I can help you to train my replacement, and I'm more than happy to attend meetings and give my input. He took a deep breath. Depending on what happens, and if a position opens up in the future, I'd be willing to come back, maybe. But for now, I'll be working at Billy's full-time. His father stomped over to him, got into his face. That white girl put you up to this, didn't she? She always gave me a bad feeling. He balled his hand into a fist, resisted the urge to pummel his father's face. Lord, help me. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a few seconds. Tell the truth. The words washed over him. Patty-Lynn has nothing to do with this. This is between me and you. Don't you ever badmouth the woman that I love, you hear me? He blinked, his eyes vacant as he plopped back into his chair. Well, if she didn't put you up to this, then who did? God did. The Lord doesn't want me sick, upset whenever you call me. You don't know if a new job will help you with your stomach issues, his father said in a hoarse voice. He shrugged. I'm willing to try. I want to be on my own without your influence. He paused, licked his lips. I'm going to ask Patty-Lynn to marry me. No, don't interrupt me. I'm not sure when I'll ask her, but I know I'm going to. I honestly don't know if she'll say yes. Dad, I need to do this. I want to do this. I'm almost 30 years old, and it's high time for me to be making my own decisions. Sometimes I feel like you don't approve of me, don't even like me. A new thought occurred to him. When did you start making your own decisions? Did Grandpa advise you until after you were 30 years old? The question spilled from his mouth, suddenly making him realize how little he knew about his father. He sighed. Your grandfather advised me for a long time. He knew the business and told me that was the way that I should raise you. He said it was his way of showing his love for me. He said that Richardson Enterprises was our legacy, and there were things about the business that I needed to learn. His voice broke. Tears spilled from his cheeks. He taught me that I needed to stay on my toes and not make a mistake. He said when I started to train you, I needed to be frugal with my praise. He'd said if you praise too much, it makes a worker not as eager, too soft. Son, you are doing an excellent job, and I'm proud of you. He wiped his wet eyes with his sleeve. If that's all you wanted to hear, then you've heard it. Will you at least think about your decision and maybe change your mind? He hugged his father, hard. He then released him, realized his own eyes were wet. He sniffed and took a few steps away. This was the first time he'd ever seen his dad cry. Just seeing him like this made him seem so ordinary. Dad, do you think that we could get together to just talk once a month? I could drive down here and we can do lunch or something? He was still taking the job at Billy's corporate office, but felt that if he saw his dad regularly, without talking business, their relationship might improve. He sensed his dad may have some things that he wanted to say, stuff about his life that he'd never discussed with him. Well, he wanted to hear everything about his father's life. His father nodded. That's fine, Sam. They hugged again before Sam left the house and got into his car. As he drove home, he kept thinking about his father. Lord, please help me and my father to heal our relationship. Amen. Chapter 14. 1 month later, Patty-Lynn pulled out her red and white cooler from the hall closet, humming. This Sunday afternoon, she'd made plans to go out with Sam for a picnic in the park. The bakery was closed that day, and she'd been looking forward to this date for over a week. So much had happened over the last month. Ever since Richardson Enterprises had turned down the deal for her pie recipe, she'd gotten over her disappointment. She figured the Lord may have something else in store for her and her pies, so she'd not shed any more tears over that. She still continued to visit her beloved house occasionally. Hopefully, the new owners wouldn't remove the tulip bulbs that she'd planted with her mom years ago. She still had bittersweet feelings about that house. Call her silly, but she still wished that she could buy that house and live there. When she talked to Sam about her house, he really listened to her. Heck, when she talked to him about anything, he usually listened. Being with him felt nostalgic and so good. This last month had been wonderful, and she loved getting to know Sam all over again. Slowly, she was learning how to trust him again. It felt a bit weird, dating him again, learning to lean on him. She honestly didn't know how their relationship would progress at this point. She loved him so much that it was scary in a way. Once he'd had to go home to see his dad for a business matter. He'd been away for 3 days and she'd missed him like crazy. He often stopped by the bakery, sometimes just to talk before he went to work or after he'd gotten off from his job. She loved him, and he'd been there for her emotionally, but she honestly didn't know if she could ever rely on Sam the way a wife relied on a husband. She'd gotten used to being alone on this earth and didn't really know if she could fathom a long-term relationship with Sam. Was he really the right person for her? After all, she'd had yet to re-meet his family since they'd started dating again. Even though he'd left Richardson Enterprises, she still had to wonder if his family could sway his decision when it came to romance. She dumped ice into the cooler. Sam would provide the food for their picnic, and he told her to bring the drinks and the dessert. Hands down, she'd decided to bring her banana cream pie. She also packed the plastic forks, some paper plates, and plenty of napkins. She also brought some hand wipes. Her pie could get messy, so she needed to be prepared when they had their meal. After she closed the cooler, she checked her reflection in the mirror. She'd gotten a bit of a tan so far this summer. Her freckles didn't stand out as much on her face, which was good. Smiling, she vividly recalled the romantic picnic lunches they used to share while dating years ago. How she'd loved those times they'd shared, eating on the checkered blanket and sharing hot, passionate kisses afterward. A hard knock resonated through her small apartment. After checking her reflection one last time, she rushed into the living room and opened the door. Sam leaned against the doorframe, looking gorgeous in a pair of tan knee-length shorts, pecan sandals, and a yellow-collared shirt. "Hi, beautiful." He kissed her cheek before retrieving the cooler from the kitchen. "Hi," she barely said the word as nervous butterflies danced in her stomach. The nervous butterflies continued drifting in her tummy as he drove to the Crystal Spring Park a few miles down the road. The butterflies were probably from... Oh, she didn't know why she was nervous. She eyed his muscular calves while he turned a corner. He gave her a quick glance while he stopped at a light. "You look pretty today." "Thanks." The color red suited her tanned skin. She loved her sundress and sandals. She glanced into the back seat and spotted the slatted picnic basket. The blue and white checkered blanket rested on top of the basket. Her heart skipped. It was the same blanket they'd used so many years ago. He finally pulled into traffic again, and soon they'd arrived at their destination. He rushed over and opened her door for her. She got out of the car and opened the door to the back seat. She reached in to grab the basket so that he could get the cooler. He shook his head. "Hold on." He removed the blanket and took her hand. Holding hands, they made their way toward the exquisite lake. Ducks swam on the smooth surface of the water, their loud quacks ringing in the hot, humid air. Wildflowers bloomed nearby, perfuming the air with their exquisite sweetness. He chose a spot and spread the large blanket on the grass. He gestured toward the blanket. "Go ahead and sit down, I'll get the rest of our stuff." She made herself comfortable on the blanket. She braced her arms behind her and tilted her head toward the sky. She breathed deeply, enjoying the exquisite weather. Sam soon returned with their picnic basket and the cooler. He opened the basket and removed her favorite Italian submarine sandwiches. Before they ate, he took her hands, and they closed their eyes. "Dear Lord, thank you so much for this wonderful meal. We're honored and pleased that you've blessed us with this wonderful day. And thank you, Lord, for Patty-Lynn's company. She's a blessing, and I hope we'll continue spending time together for a long time. Amen." Amen. He unwrapped the sandwiches and opened bags of potato chips. Suddenly hungry, Patty-Lynn devoured her sandwich and chips. She also enjoyed a cool strawberry soda over ice. Sam ate half of his sandwich. She eyed him. He seemed happy and had not been complaining about his stomach. So why'd he not finish his sandwich? "Your ulcer heal up?" She took a gulp of soda. He nodded. "Almost. For the time being, it's best for me not to eat too much at one time." He patted his stomach. "Besides, I want to save some room for dessert." She smiled as she unwrapped the pie and cut 2 large slices. She sliced her fork into the pie and shoved a bite into her mouth. The smooth, creamy pudding, bananas and wafers, danced on her tongue with unique sweetness. Pure bliss. "This is so good." He smiled and gave her a quick wink. "It sure is." Her tummy dipped with pleasure when he winked at her. He put his half-eaten pie aside. He then took her plate and fed her the rest of her pie. A glob of whipped cream landed on the corner of her mouth. Taking his tongue, he licked the cream away. Her white skin reddened and happiness exploded within her like firecrackers. Once he'd finished feeding her the pie, he took her hand, gently coaxed her onto his muscular lap. He kissed her forehead. She stared at their joined hands, loving the way his mocha-brown skin clashed with her lightly tanned complexion. "The reason why I asked you on this picnic was because I had a question for you." She looked up into his gorgeous face. "Really? What's that?" He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. "Will you marry me, Patty-Lynn? I love you and want you to be my wife." She gulped. She had not been expecting this today, not at all. She accepted the box and opened it. The large solitaire ring sparkled in the brilliant sun, flashing color. She snapped the box shut and pressed it back into his hand. She shook her head. "I can't. I just can't, Sam." She removed herself from his arms and ran into the nearby woods. He didn't think this would happen. He eyed Patty-Lynn rushing toward the woods. He jumped to his feet, ran as fast as he could to the grove of trees. He easily found her. She leaned against the tree, wiped her tears away. He took a deep breath, slowed his steps, came toward her. "Patty-Lynn, talk to me. Tell me what's wrong." The urge to hold her, comfort her, rushed through him like a tidal wave, but he sensed he should keep his distance. He'd already scared her away with his marriage proposal. He certainly didn't want to alienate her further. "Lord, I really need your help. I love Patty-Lynn, and I want to marry her. I sensed a deep connection, a bond forming between us, and I thought her feelings were just as strong as mine. I just can't get married, Sam." Maybe she needed more time. He wouldn't know what the problem was until she opened up to him. He balled his hands into fists and again resisted the urge to hold her in his arms. "Why not?" "Sam, I've been by myself most my life." He nodded. She wasn't telling him anything that he didn't already know. He still found her reaction puzzling, dating and getting to know each other again. It was just steps away from his asking to marry her. Both of them were strong Christians, and their budding feelings could only be fully recognized physically by getting married. "I know that. But maybe it's time for you not to be alone anymore." It's just so hard, Sam. We're so different. Would a marriage between us even work? Would it? Hard to say, but he was willing to try. Since both of them had deep faith, he could imagine that was the best foundation for any marriage. No marriage is perfect. Heck, his marriage to Lorena was far from perfect. But with time, I think we could fall into a routine and make it work. What about your family? Are they going to stop talking to you if you get married to me? Her lip quivered as she looked directly at him with her tear-stained, watery brown eyes. You going to resent me for causing a separation between you and your family? His heart skipped, surprised at the severity of the question. He hesitated and tried to think of how to answer. She shrieked, "See, you're not saying anything. You will resent me." He shook his head. "You didn't give me a chance to respond. I just wanted to be sure I said the right thing." The sun shined through the canopy of trees, highlighting Patty-Lynn's small, pale features. Her pretty lips hardened into a frown. Unable to resist any longer, he pulled her into his arms, kissed her forehead. "I love you, Patty-Lynn. I've spoken to my family, and I've already told them that they have to learn to accept you. I told them that I'm going to marry you, if you say yes, and that you'd be a part of my family. They agreed to that?" Her voice, full of doubt, made him pause. "I think they will with time. It won't be easy, but I think they'll learn to accept you. Sam, I'm scared. Baby, I just wish you'd give our relationship a chance. Why are you scared? Is it because you've been alone for most of your life?" She didn't respond to his question. "Why do you love me, Sam?" What kind of a question was that? "Patty-Lynn, if I listed all of the reasons why I love you, then we'd be in this park all day." She shrugged. "Well, tell me some reasons." "I like your spirit, Patty-Lynn. You're one of the strongest, most courageous women I've ever known. Your life has been hard, but you took your experiences and made the best of them. I love how you run your own business, taking charge of your life, making the most of it." He paused, licked his lips, kissed her forehead. "I love to watch you in the kitchen, baking sweets. The thought of seeing you every day brings me joy. You're beautiful both inside and out, and I love your faith in the Lord. You pray about your life, and that's important to me." She nodded and relaxed her shoulders. Well, she wasn't crying anymore, so that was a good sign, wasn't it? Well, their romantic picnic in the park had taken a nosedive. But since Patty-Lynn seemed to have calmed down, he figured he needed to try and salvage things. He studied her. Her head bowed, her small shoulders tensed. He thought about her childhood in that house she wanted so much. He recalled their wonderful, deeply emotional romance while she'd worked on the college campus. Her blunt honesty had been one of the first things he'd noticed, well, after he'd seen her petite, shapely figure. He closed his eyes, visions of all he could recall about her going through his mind like a movie. He opened his eyes. Her head was still bowed, and she wiped her eyes. "I love you, and you have feelings for me, too. I know you do." He sighed as the truth hit him in the gut like a solid brick. "Since we've been dating, you've been afraid of taking a chance on marrying me because our feelings could grow. You think, if you marry me, I'll end up hurting you again." He shook his head, again recalling her fascination with her childhood home. "It hurt you when your parents died. The foster homes, you hated living in those places. Then you dated me. You'd said I was your first serious boyfriend. She'd been a virgin when he dated her during his college years. She'd opened up to him both emotionally and physically, and he'd hurt her. I don't think my hurting you in the past is the only reason why you're upset. Sam, let me finish. I think you want to live in that house from your childhood by yourself, alone, so that you can relive the memories of being happy with your folks. If it wasn't me, Sam, asking to marry you, even if another guy were asking you, I think you'd still be leery of his proposal. This is more about you and what's happened in your life than what happened between us in college." "No, that's not it at all. It's just too soon, Sam. We only been dating since the spring, and it's already midsummer. You barely give me enough time to catch my breath, and get to know you again before you ask me about something as serious as marriage." He'd hit a nerve with her. He could tell by the sudden clench of her jaw that she was upset. Well, he refused to take no for an answer, at least not yet. "Do you need some time to think about it?" She slowly nodded, her brown hair shining in the sunlight. He kissed her forehead again and took her hand. "Come on, let's go get our picnic basket and our blanket. Let me take you home." She mutely nodded and squeezed his hand as they trekked out of the woods. Chapter 15. Patty-Lynn placed the vanilla cookies into the box, closed it before taping it shut. Rachel cleared her throat as she pulled a tray of blueberry tarts out of the oven. "So, how long are you going to wait before giving Sam your answer?" It was the day after Sam's proposal. During the day, she'd told Rachel all about her romantic picnic with Sam. Her friend had gasped when Patty-Lynn showed her Sam's ring. He'd insisted that she keep the ring until she'd made her decision. "Take as long as you'd like," he told her on the way home. She sighed and abandoned the box of cookies beside the register. They were for a special order, and the customer was due to pick them up any minute. "Mind if we take a coffee break for a few minutes?" Exhausted, it'd been hard for her to work that day. The previous night, she'd tossed and turned, unable to sleep, just thinking about Sam's proposal. She'd placed the ring on her finger, taken it off, stared at it so hard that the image of the ring had been emblazoned in her mind. Rachel took the lead by pouring 2 cups of hazelnut coffee. She also sliced pieces of the apple pies that they'd made earlier. Patty-Lynn plopped down at the table and stared at the pie before focusing on the steam rising from her cup of coffee. She took a sip, eyed her friend observing her. "What? You look tired." "I am, Rachel. I just don't know what to do." "So, what exactly bothers you?" She told Rachel about what Sam had said, that her hesitation didn't necessarily stem from their aborted college romance. "He thinks I'd reject a proposal from any man, no matter who he is, because I'm scared to move forward with my life and be happy in marriage." "Well, is that true?" She shrugged. "I don't know. First, I thought it wasn't true, but after I thought about it, Sam might have a point." "Well, I plan on helping you with your indecision. Have you prayed?" "All night, but God's been silent." "Well, keep praying, and in the meantime, I'll help you figure this out." Patty-Lynn sliced into the pie, took a bite. The delicious apples and cinnamon danced on her tongue with sweetness. She took another sip of coffee, already feeling a bit better from the food. She'd not eaten all day. Her stomach had been tied in nervous knots. "How will you help me?" Rachel went back into the office and returned with a pad of paper and a pencil. "We're going to list why you are so hesitant to accept Sam's offer." She took a bite of pie before pressing her pencil onto the paper. She wrote a 1 with a period beside it. "Okay, what's the first reason you're hesitant about accepting Sam's offer?" Gee, she hadn't expected Rachel to be so analytical about it. Her mind had been a tumultuous wreck all night, so perhaps writing everything out would help her. "Well, I ain't never been married. Only time I had a serious relationship was with Sam 7 years ago. I'm used to being by myself, no parents, no siblings." She paused, enjoyed another bite of pie before speaking. "Being with somebody as a spouse, leaning on him, being a helpmate, just kind of scary. What if I grow to love him more, and then he dumps me, just like he did 7 years ago?" Rachel wrote, "Afraid of being rejected." So, sounds like Sam was speaking the truth? "We'd still be having this same discussion even if you'd ended up receiving a proposal from someone other than Sam, right?" She nodded and licked her fork. "That's sort of scary. It almost seems like Sam knows me better than I know myself. You know what I mean?" Her friend nodded and sipped her coffee, remained silent, as if she were gathering her thoughts. "But Patty-Lynn, that was 7 years ago. Sam's been married, and he's lost his wife. He's a widower, and he's older, more mature. What if he doesn't reject you? What if his love for you grows stronger every day? Plus, he wasn't a Christian when he dated you the first time." Sam seems like he's strong in his faith, and that's the best foundation for any marriage. Whew. Granted, she'd pondered Sam's Christianity, but had not thought about his being older, more mature, a widower. If you tell him no, won't you always wonder what would have happened if you'd said yes? Now, that was an interesting thought. What would happen if she told Sam no? Would pain pierce through her heart whenever she spotted him with another woman in church? Yeah, she'd be upset if she saw Sam dating somebody else. Rachel wrote a number 2 on the paper. What's the second reason you're struggling with your decision? His family. They hate me. Probably still do. Rachel titled her head and took a sip of coffee. She wrote, Sam's family. You don't know if they still hate you. It's been 7 years and a lot can happen during that time. Plus, they've lost their daughter-in-law. That might change them a little bit, perhaps. She shrugged. What happened when you met them 7 years ago? Patty-Lynn told Rachel about the chilly response she'd gotten when she met them. Told her about the disastrous dinner. I didn't even know a proper place setting. They hated the way I talked. Rachel leaned over and took her hand. Your southern accent is charming. You can make an effort to speak grammatically correct when you are around them. It might take some effort, but Sam will see that you're at least willing to try and accept his family. She took a deep breath. You'll know what to do during a meal with place settings and such. You're more knowledgeable about those things now than you were 7 years ago. Well, she'd never thought about it that way. Rachel was talking about compromise, something she'd not been willing to do years ago. She'd wanted his family to accept her as she was, and she made no effort to succumb to their snobbish ways. But they might not see their ways as snobbish, if that's all they'd been exposed to, all that they'd learned since birth. The bell above the door chimed as a customer breezed into the bakery. Rachel abandoned her chair and went to the register. She rang up the customer's specially ordered cookies, as well as a blueberry pie. After she'd collected the money and had given the customer their change, she returned to the table. She picked up her pad of paper and her pencil and gave Patty-Lynn a serious look. Is there another reason that you're struggling with your response to Sam's proposal? She nodded, grateful that Rachel was writing this down, helping her to sort through her thoughts. Her friend had given her a few kernels of information to think about, definitely food for thought. Time. Rachel gave her a small smile. She wrote a number 3 and wrote the word time. Care to elaborate about that? Well, I'm just starting to get to know Sam again. We've only been seeing each other for a couple of months now. She finished her delicious pie. Rachel got up and brought the rest of the pie to the table. Without asking, she cut both of them another slice of pie, topped off their coffee. That's too soon to get engaged. With all the problems that happened the first time we dated, with his family and his desire to please them, I kind of feel like we need to keep dating for a while. She took another bite of pie. I feel like when I meet his family, it might be less intimidating for me to initially meet them as Sam's girlfriend instead of as his fiancée. Rachel nodded and stared outside the window for a few seconds. A couple strolled by, holding hands. Why don't you tell Sam? He's already told you that he loves you. You can tell him how you feel and make this suggestion to him. Rachel took a deep breath. Maybe when you initially meet his family, it might be less intimidating to meet them someplace else, someplace outside their home. You'd mentioned that the dinner at Sam's parents' house had been a disaster. Why not meet them at a restaurant, a nice place of your choosing? Explain to Sam how much you want to make this work, but let him know of your concerns. Another customer strolled through the door, interrupting their conversation. As Patty-Lynn worked for the rest of the day, she thought about Rachel's advice. Over the following week, she prayed and avoided going to the singles group. She didn't want to run into Sam. It would have been awkward since she'd still not decided how she wanted to approach their delicate situation. After a week of thinking and praying about Sam, she finally texted him, "Can we talk tomorrow evening at 7?" She then texted the address for a popular seafood restaurant outside of town. They served the best crab cakes, as well as steamed lobster and fried shrimp. She had not been there in a while, and she was sure that Sam would enjoy it. She immediately received his response. "I'll be there." Sam dressed in his khaki shorts, brown sandals, and his blue polo shirt. He sprayed cologne on his skin. He'd even gotten a haircut and shave earlier that day at the barbershop. He'd wanted to wear a suit and tie, but had Googled the restaurant that Patty-Lynn had suggested. It was a casual, family-friendly restaurant that served wonderful seafood. When he'd initially read about the type of restaurant she'd chosen, he'd been concerned. Concerned because since this restaurant was not romantic at all, he figured she'd chosen it on purpose, the casual setting, to let him know that she was not accepting his proposal. He could imagine her suggesting they remain platonic friends. But was that even possible? Whenever he saw Patty-Lynn, the first thing he wanted to do was kiss her, hold her, love her. That's all he wanted to do. She was so precious to him, and he wanted her in his life forever. If she told him no, then he doubted he'd have the courage to go to singles meeting at Thomas's church anymore. He'd called Mark earlier that week, let him know what Patty-Lynn had said after his proposal. Mark had suggested he give the situation some time. Considering their cruel breakup 7 years ago, Mark had said he'd understood Patty-Lynn's doubts. "Don't borrow trouble, man," he'd advised. "Just wait and see what she has to say." Well, he'd waited all week. So many times he'd been tempted to call her or text her, but he'd resisted. He needed to give her time to digest his proposal, figure out if she wanted to accept it. Hopefully, she had some good news to share this evening. He got into his car and started the engine. Seemed like he should be picking her up and taking her to the restaurant himself. But he knew that wasn't going to fly this evening. She wanted to meet him there. She'd been emphatic about that. He arrived at the seafood restaurant 20 minutes later. After he'd parked, he entered the place. Bright sunshine spilled through the clean windows, highlighting the festive tables filled with families enjoying their seafood dinners. He spotted a man pulling a crab leg from a small metal bucket on the table. He cracked it open with a seafood cracker, pulled the succulent white meat from the shell, popped it into his mouth. The hostess approached. "Table for one?" He shook his head. "I'm meeting somebody. Not sure if she's here yet." She nodded. "Are you here for Patty-Lynn?" He raised his eyebrows. "Yes," she gestured toward the back. "Come with me." He followed her to the secluded table in the back. Patty-Lynn sat at the table, but stood as soon as she spotted him. She looked lovely. She wore a casual denim dress and sandals, large hoop earrings dangled from her ears. Her hair looked different, as if she'd gotten it cut or something. Her rose-scented perfume wafted toward him. The familiar scent made him ache with longing. Her dark eyes sparkled as he approached the table. She hugged him hard. "Thanks for coming, Sam. I already ordered our food." They'd barely sat before their server appeared, with a pitcher of water, drinks, and crab cake sandwiches and fries. After he'd prayed over their meal, he wanted to ask her about his proposal, but sensed it was best if they ate first. The food proved delicious. He'd need to remember to bring Patty-Lynn here for future dates. That is, if there were any future dates. After they'd finished eating and sipped their drinks, Patty-Lynn finally told him what was on her mind. "Sam, I'd like to talk to you about your proposal." Well, she certainly had his attention. He nodded, not wanting to interrupt, anxious to hear what she had to say. Surprisingly, she opened up her purse, pulled out a sheet of paper. She pursed her red-painted lips, obviously thinking, "I have so much to say. That's why I had to write everything down. I'm so nervous. Well, I just didn't want to forget anything." He took her soft hand and glanced at her polished nails. "Patty-Lynn, you don't ever have to be nervous around me." She pulled her hand away. Uh-oh, this was not a good sign. "Well, I'm nervous right now and I can't help it. Please don't touch me. It's distracting." He frowned. This did not sound good at all. Her voice sounded crisp, businesslike, not at all like a woman who was in love with him. Heck, she probably didn't love him, and that's why she chose to meet him in this unromantic, family-friendly restaurant. She looked directly into his face. "I just made you sad. I see it in your face. Don't be sad." She took a deep breath. "I told you not to touch me. Because, well, Sam, when you touch me, I like it. I like it a lot. I can't focus on feeling good right now from your touching and kissing. I just need to tell you all that's on my mind. Whoa. He'd not been expecting this. He dipped his head. I'm sorry. She ignored his apology, focused on her list. For the next half hour, Patty-Lynn told him so much, his mind was spinning like a top. She talked about what had bothered her when they dated 7 years ago. She also mentioned her concerns about his family, suggesting she initially meet them as a girlfriend instead of as his future spouse. After she was finished talking, he still was unsure how things were between them. So this means you're not accepting my proposal, or you're not sure? Patty-Lynn tended to speak fast when she was nervous, and she'd been talking a mile a minute. Sam, this is what I want to do. I want to keep your ring. I want us to keep dating, but I want to meet your family, continue to interact with them. Is it okay if we keep dating until the end of the summer? I just need to be sure about this. I love you, and I want to be sure things will work out for us before I officially accept your proposal. He wanted her to say yes, right now, but considering their past, he could understand why she'd hesitate. He nodded. Okay. He took her hand. He mentally sighed with relief when she didn't pull away. Chapter 16. 3 months later. Patty-Lynn kicked the colorful leaves on the sidewalk, rushing toward the bakery. Autumn. Already the mornings had gotten cool. Since she'd been dating Sam, her life had not been the same. She'd finally met his family for the first time, shortly after their seafood date. She had to admit, the meeting was not pleasant, nor was it unpleasant. She'd had a stilted, halfway decent conversation with his mother and sister. His dad had been stoic, hardly speaking throughout the meal, but at least he had not yelled at her or acted foolish. Since his family lived 2 hours away, and due to both her and Sam's work schedules, she'd only managed to see his family 3 times. Each time proved better than the previous. When Sam's sister Kelly had phoned her, wanting to go shopping alone, Patty-Lynn had originally been suspicious. She'd wondered if Sam's sister had apprehensions about her relationship with her brother. However, the shopping trip had proven a success. She'd managed to have a heart-to-heart talk with his sister, and now she often phoned. She'd found a new friend, and that had been nice. A car passed by in the early morning. A horn blared. Sam. She grinned and waved. That morning, before she'd left her apartment, she'd put Sam's ring on her finger. She'd made the decision to marry him. He parked and got out of his car. Hi, beautiful, he cooed, pulling her into his arms. He kissed her, slow, deep, and steady. Her knees weakened as she moaned and pulled away. Sam, you keep kissing me like that, I'm going to fall right out here on this sidewalk. He laughed. The deep sound bellowed on the cool, early autumn morning. She flashed her left hand in front of him. I was going to plan a special date to tell you this, but I might as well tell you now. My answer is yes. He whooped, pulled her into his arms, and lifted her, kissing her again. 3 months later, what's the surprise, Sam? They'd just returned the previous day from their Hawaii honeymoon. Much to his mother's chagrin, they'd had a small wedding on the Hawaiian beach, only attended by close friends and family members. Mark had been Sam's best man, and Rachel had been her maid of honor. They were now in Sam's Lexus, driving to a surprise Sam had planned for her. He chuckled. You'll see. Her heart skipped when Sam pulled into the familiar neighborhood where her house was located. She sat up straighter, her eyes rounded when he stopped in front of the nostalgic house, the home she'd wanted to purchase. A huge red bow decorated the front door, and a woman wearing a business suit smiled at them from the sidewalk. Sam, who's that lady grinning at us? That's the real estate agent. If you really want this house, we're scheduled to sign the settlement papers tomorrow. She smacked his shoulder. Sam, don't be fooling with me. Is this really our house? It was sold last summer. He placed his sexy brown fingers over her lips, his eyes dark and intense. I was able to make the owners an offer they could not refuse, so after tomorrow, the house will be legally ours. He pulled her into his arms. Baby, I know you don't have many memories about your parents, and I know having this house means so much to you. She squealed, pulled his face toward hers, kissed his full lips. She took his hand and rushed toward the door. Can we go see inside? Her voice sounded high-pitched and excited, but she didn't care if she sounded foolish. She wanted to get inside and see the basement where she used to live with her parents. He grinned. We sure can. The realtor approached them with the key in her hand. She presented the key to Sam and he unlocked the door. He then picked her up and carried her across the threshold. Happiness exploded within her heart as they entered their new home.
I'm Cecelia Dowdy, the author of Sweet Delights. Thank you for reading Sweet Delights. I hope you love Sam and Patty-Lynn's story as much as I do. Hit the subscribe button. Your subscribing will enable me to provide more videos for you to enjoy. If you enjoyed Sweet Delights, then please leave a sweet 1 or 2 sentence review on Amazon or Goodreads. The next book in the Bakery Romance series delves into the heart-wrenching lives of Kelly and Jamal. They were high school sweethearts who reconnect as they help feed the homeless. But there is more to their story than meets the eye. Read Cinnamon Kisses now. The link is in the comments. And again, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And have a wonderful day. I appreciate you reading my books or listening to my books.